What's up, guys? We've got an extended version of the podcast today, so I'm going to make this short and sweet. In episode number 5 of Spinning It, I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with former San Antonio Clark Cougar and Air Force Academy football player Noah Oviedo. Noah and I have known one another for about 3 years now, and every time we sit down and talk, we have a great time. We had the opportunity to talk about San Antonio youth football, the special relationship between a father and his children in sports, what the Clark football power teams of the 80s and 90s were like, what it's like to be recruited by the Air Force Academy's football program, and much, much more. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Noah Oviedo.
Step inside, walk this way, you and me, babe. Hey, hey!
At the end of the milk carton. You know what I mean?
Oh, I messed that up so much. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The arrow points the thing, and I couldn't figure that out, apparently.
Still mess it up. What's up, guys? We got Noah Oviedo in the studio today. We're talking kids right now. I heard you talk about, you said your son takes lessons at Topgolf.
Topgolf.
Talk to me. What's that all about? I just had my first Topgolf experience for my birthday. My wife took me out, and it was cool. It was very cool.
Yeah, Topgolf's a neat. It's a neat program over there for the kids. It's kind of I think it's like 3:30 to 5:30 on Wednesdays is the group he's in, and it's an hour long. The pro is real good with kids over there. His name's David, and it's not real expensive. I think we spend like 40. It's like basically $10 a week or something.
Sure, that's awesome.
And they go out there. He limits them to 150 cuts, and he teaches them how to hit different balls and kind of puts it in perspective for them as far as something that they can understand. If you've never swung a golf club before, it's not like anything else.
No, not at all.
It's not a tennis racket. It's not a racquetball racket.
Not a baseball bat.
Not a baseball bat.
I still swing it like a baseball bat at times.
Yeah, and I watched my kid go out there at a birthday party one time at Topgolf, and he was swinging and actually hitting the ball straight and far, and I was like, well, we see if we can get it. He's kind of long and lanky.
Sure.
Kind of got that golf look. So my wife likes it because she goes out there with him on 3:30 or 4.
Does JR if she golfs?
I don't know.
Oh, she just wants to go watch
she
him. Okay,
likes
gotcha.
to sit back and she can drink a glass of wine
Sure.
and enjoy herself.
And it's got a nice bar. I mean, it's got two big bars out there. It's very nice.
Yeah, they have live music on the weekends. It's good. Topgolf is great.
Yeah,
it's a fun place. But so that's a lot of fun for him. We had some challenges with him. My son did some time in a wheelchair and had some surgeries on his hip. He had a weird thing happen with it. So for a long time,
Bo Jackson had a hip issue too.
Yeah.
He turned out okay.
Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to work out great too. It's one of those things that's actually kind of changed his personality and how he views different things and how lucky he is to be able to just run around. He really appreciates that now because he did spend almost a year in a walker and about 3 months of that in a wheelchair.
And how old was he when he was going through all this?
We discovered it when he was playing soccer. It was August, and he was 7. He had just turned 7 years old, and he started kind of limping. And of course, I was helping coach. I don't really coach soccer. I don't know much about it. And so I was watching him, and of course, helping out somewhere else. And I kept, like a dad coach does, quit skipping, quit goofing around.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so he kept trying to run, but he kept doing that. And we took him to the doctor, and the doctor said, it's just growing pains, or something like that.
Sure.
And then one of the coaches a couple of practices later was like, hey, look, his foot was turning in. His right foot was kind of going pigeon-toed.
Yeah.
And he was limping around, but he was still trying real hard. And so we took him to a specialist. And it turns out what he had is a disease called Perthes, which affects 1 in 12,000 kids in the United States. There's no etiology. They don't know how it starts or how it manifests, but it's essentially, to use a big word here, I'm going to sound smart for a second, it's avascular necrosis of the femur. And so up in the hip area, the bone loses blood flow, so the bone starts to become brittle and soft. And
I'm pretty positive that's something Bo Jackson, very similar to what he had.
Yeah, and but his was deformed to a point where it was actually pinching the artery down, so he could have actually lost his leg. Towns's wasn't. It could manifest in that later if you don't take care of it. So, being that he was a 7-year-old overactive kid, he couldn't play soccer anymore. We had to put him on crutches at school just to keep him from running around because he could have broke it at any time or dislocated it. And because it was so rare, they had to go through this whole process of they went to an orthopedic conference and had a whole discussion, a panel with the doctors on what to do.
Really?
Because he was older than the average Perthes patient also. So they finally decided to do what's called a femoral osteotomy, where they go in there and break the bone and straighten it all back out. So they straightened everything out and put a big plate on there. We spent about 5 days in the ICU with him. That's a real scary event. Of all the scary things I've ever done in my life, waiting for my kid to wake up after surgery was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life.
I won't imagine.
And but you know, he just showed a tremendous spirit about him. He didn't get, you know, we switched schools at the time. While he was recovering, we moved to our neighborhood that we live in now. He was homeschooled for about 6 weeks, and then he started at an elementary school in 1st grade in a wheelchair. So you can't imagine what that must be like, you know.
Mm-mm.
And so, you know, Mom and Dad, we were a little worried about that. And,
Well, and some kids would feel awkward just starting at a new school, and then you hear some kids say, "Well, I don't have the right shoes, you know, or I don't have the right shirt," and there's a little difference there in adversity, you know, and what really matters, you know.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't just sit in the parking lot every now and again and wonder, you know, maybe sit there for an hour and see if I could see him and make sure he was doing all right.
Sure.
But, you know, I tell you, the kids will surprise you, even the ones that, you know, you wonder if there's going to be a kid that'll pick on him or call him names or anything like that. And you know, it didn't happen. Kids kind of rallied around him. I do credit the teachers and the administration with really kind of getting behind it. And he was the only kid like that in the school. And so, you know, kids were helping him out. And he made some great friendships because of it. And it's a small elementary school. And he's in 3rd grade now. We did all the fun rehab stuff and got back to where he could, you know, felt good, but still couldn't do anything because it was still healing. And he asked me for the first time this year, he's like, "I want to play football, Dad." And it was kind of heartbreaking a little bit because you're like, you know, I'd love for him to play football. And but we had to tell him, you know, we got to wait another couple of years.
Sure.
I didn't start playing until I was in the 5th grade.
I didn't start till 7th grade.
Yeah.
The Mannings didn't start till 9th grade.
Yeah, it's to me, it's not something that you need to be in a hurry to do.
I agree.
And I think sometimes you can probably burn out a little too early.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, and so I'm not too worried about that. And just having to tell him he couldn't do something is not something you want to do as a parent either.
Sure.
And he's persevering well. He played baseball in the spring, and you know, had to relearn how to swing and do all that stuff, and he did great.
Good.
You know, he had his ups and downs, but he's got a real positive attitude. You know, he'd go strike out 3 times, and we'd be riding home. I'm like, "How do you think you did?" He's like, "Man, you know, I almost hit the ball. It was pretty close. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna get it next time." You know, so he never had a bad attitude about any of it, which is a real positive thing and something that you can really harness in life later on. Sure. So, anyways, so that's what we do with him. And Casey, my daughter, man, she's doing great. She's a really, really good dancer. She likes doing it. I think she got into it originally for the tutus and all that stuff, which you'll find out about. You know,
oh, we already got multiple tutus.
Yeah.
I don't understand why, but Kelly the other day had 2 tutus on her.
Yeah.
Okay.
My daughter will beg me to wear a skirt, and even on gym day at school. So, "Dad, I want to wear a skirt. I'll wear my shorts underneath the skirt so that, you know, if it flies up, it's no big deal."
Sure.
It's always into bargaining, but she likes to dress in girl clothes and do girly things.
Mm-hmm.
But she straps on the shin guards and does pretty good in soccer this year. So
Nice.
I'm pretty impressed with that.
Very
It's a
good.
lot of fun to go watch.
Yeah, man. It's funny that you talk about because I'm already dealing with this, and I know I'm going to have issues with it. How you talk about you were worried about maybe some kids bullying or being mean to Towns. Shout out Towns. First of all, you got a super cool name, dude. I hope you're listening to this. I really, really like it. And you got a cool dad. How about that? But I already, when we put Vera down with other little like some of her cousins or friends and stuff like that, the first thing I think of is they better treat her nice. They better be good to her. And they're little kids, her age, or maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. But I automatically I'm hawkeyeing all these kids. Like, you better accept her. You better be sweet to her. It's insane.
Yeah, the dynamic of that is pretty amazing. You know, having one of each. I was just talking with my wife, and I do that with my daughter all the time. You know, I never want her to get hurt, never want her to have her feelings hurt or anything like that.
Sure.
And my son, I'm like, tough it out, boy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I'm sure that's not fair.
I know. I'm sure it shouldn't be different, but Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
just the
feel
way
right
it
now
is.
about it,
and,
yeah.
And my wife feels the same way in the opposite. You know, she can be hard on my daughter because she knows what that's all about, but she's got a soft spot for my son.
Of course.
We kind of have that dynamic, and it's why it's important, I think, that, you know, we're both very, try to be as involved as possible in our kids' lives.
Sure. Oh, dude, I was a huge mama's boy, and my mom just loved the role of me being a mama's boy. So
It's fantastic.
it was cool. Well, a little background on Noah. Noah and I probably met about we met longer than that, but really started hanging out and becoming buds. But about 3 years ago, I guess about 3 years ago, we go to the same church. We've been on similar events with the church, and Noah was actually my sponsor at one point, and just an amazing guy. We've our relationship has continued to grow. We share a lot of things. One being our relationship and our religion, and another our love of family, and finally what this podcast is all about, football and sports. And Noah's got an awesome story. I don't even know any of it. I don't even know most of it, so that's why I'm excited about the parts I do know are exciting, though. He actually attended the Air Force Academy. He's going to kind of tell you how different of a life, because I know some people. My father-in-law went to the Air Force Academy, and how that's a different road to take. You're not the regular college athlete that you would be at USC or whatever. But the thing I love about Air Force football is that Air Force and Navy, Army not so much because Army hasn't been good lately, but Air Force and Navy have no business beating Notre Dame, beating whoever, and they do. And that just tells you what a disciplined, coachable team. I'll take that every time. I will. And I obviously love the option football aspect of it as well.
Well, the beauty of what what it shows me is why you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not played on paper, and you can be smaller and maybe not as strong, maybe not as fast, but if you play a team that's not playing like 11 guys, you can beat them with 11 guys. And there's a great picture when it's actually a famous picture when I was actually back at Clark. I was given a devotional for the team for the Roosevelt game, second game of the season. I saw the picture up there, and I remember it was from Coach Robbins. But he's got a big painting. Fisher DeBerry's got this big painting behind his desk, just very similar to this.
Fisher DeBerry, Air Force head coach.
Yeah, Air Force head coach when I was there, and in the College Football Hall of Fame as a coach.
Big deal.
Fantastic individual. But he had this picture of there was one guy from the opposing team, and there's a big pile up. And the important part of that picture is there's 11 Air Force helmets in the tackle, and it's just an awesome picture.
That is awesome.
It's a sort of epitome of what Air Force football and really what Service Academy football is all about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so okay, let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
My parents divorced when I was real young, and we lived with my brother and I lived with our mom for a while. Well, I grew up playing soccer. That's just kind of it was the natural progression of where I was at. There wasn't really a younger football program back then, so just needing to play a sport of some kind. My parents had put me in soccer.
Okay.
And played for a really good team, actually. I remember the first year, and I'm young for my age group. I have a July birthday.
Okay.
And my parents couldn't afford to not put me in school. So the minute I could go to kindergarten, they put me in school. And so I was playing with kids that were, in some instances, even a grade ahead of me. And
but you're okay. So if you guys don't, this is going to be on YouTube, so you'll be able to see Noah and on all the pictures and stuff like that. You're a big guy. Noah played offensive line. How'd you look back then?
I was a big boy. I've always been a big kid.
Okay, all right.
If you can picture it, 1982. A little 5'2" chubby kid wearing parachute pants. You know what I mean?
Nice.
That was me.
How old were you? 82.
In '82, I was 8 years old.
8 years old.
Rocking it.
This guy was coming out in '82, established in '82.
There you go. There you go. So, so played soccer with this really great team. In their first year, we didn't win a game. I don't even think we scored a goal in the whole first year. Nobody knew what they were doing. We had a coach that was crazy about soccer, and he had a kid on the team. His name was John Botter. I give him a shout out because
There you go.
he was by all indications a very zealous dad.
Was he
and
like
coach.
Will Ferrell on Kicking and Screaming?
Actually, he got kicked out of games.
Did he?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
He was very rambunctious.
Okay.
Very good with us as
Sure.
kids. He was never that way towards us.
Mm.
It was always towards referees and the other coaches and some parents sometimes. You
Gotcha.
know. And it was it was a pretty rowdy soccer league. We played over where Northside Stadium is now, Paul Taylor Fieldhouse.
Okay.
And we played in those fields out there.
Okay.
But you practice wherever you could find a field to practice.
Sure.
Soccer's good like that. You can play it anywhere.
Sure.
It's why it's probably the #1 sport in the world.
Yeah.
And having traveled the world, been in Africa and Southwest and Southeast Asia, they play soccer with no shoes, out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, played soccer with these guys, and by the time it was all said and done, we were playing in state championships and winning tournaments and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
What position were you?
I was a defender.
A defender.
Not a fast kid.
Okay, that's okay. What number? What? That's the first question. What was your?
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a soccer guy, I'll still entertain the. What was your first number?
It was. It's funny. It just kind of happened to work out this way. But we had a sponsor called Lucas Pizza. It was in Ingram Park Mall. They're not there anymore. And so that we could our jerseys were made by them. We could get whatever you wanted. And for some reason, I picked the number 50.
Nice.
And I think my uncle had told me a while back that I was probably destined to wear a 50, something with a 5, 6, or 7 on it.
Definitely.
And so played defense, learned how to slide tackle was my favorite thing to do.
Sure.
And my dad said, and I did it, full contact soccer, and my coach always used to say, I could kick the ball a long way, and but other than that, I wasn't much of a soccer player. You know what I mean? And
You weren't one of those guys though that would get tapped and would fall to the ground, and act like your life was over, like I see most of these other guys
It
do.
drives me. There's two things that drive me nuts about soccer. One is the flopping, and that's number one. And number two is when they just randomly add on some time at the end of the game. I don't.
Yeah, I still don't
Nobody
understand
can explain
it.
to me
I
either,
still don't
you know?
understand it. Yeah.
Anyways, so played soccer pretty much like 2 seasons a year. I mean, it was year round.
Wow.
We played, spring and fall, and made some good friends there and in that side of town. In the 4th grade, I started to play baseball for Prince of Peace. It was a CYO league, and
Okay.
it was right down the street from my house, so I could walk there because I went home. I was what they call a latchkey kid. My
Yep.
mom worked late, and so I would go home by myself, and I could walk myself to practice. Prince of Peace was a brand new Catholic church there, and so I'd never put on a glove before, never done any of that stuff. I bought a glove. I think my mom got me to be honest with you, I think it was a used glove.
Yeah, that's even better. I like a used glove over a
yeah.
new glove. You don't have to break it in.
I think we might have got it like at Goodwill or something.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And for $5 or something, and went and got that, and I didn't have a pair of cleats. Didn't know how to wear leggings. They handed us this uniform, and it's this thing that looks like a slingshot. You know what I mean?
It's confusing.
Yeah.
I agree.
And anyway, so went out there, and I could throw because we always played football, and we always threw stuff, balls back and forth. But we played a lot of sandlot football growing up, so I knew how to throw baseball, and I was fairly athletic. And so, went out there, and they put me at shortstop. I played shortstop.
Shortstop's where the
time.
baller plays.
Yeah, from there till, just about high school. And nobody could ever understand. I'm kind of one of those guys I'm not real fast on tape,
You're
line
sneaky.
to line.
You're sneaky fast.
But if you throw a ball out there, I can run to it.
Okay.
And you give me something, throw a hamburger out there, I'll run.
I
I'll
like
sprint
it.
fast, So, and I made the All-Star team that year. Went through some issues that year with, being an unsupervised 9-year-old kid.
Sure.
And I ended up
like getting kicked out of bars at 2 a.m., issues with strippers, all that kind of stuff that 9-year-olds would go through.
issues with issues with just trying to figure out how much I could get away with.
Sure.
And that culminated in not going to school a lot and doing some different things, and going through the normal rebellious kid thing on top of only seeing my dad maybe 4 or 5 days a month because it was every other weekend and all that stuff, and he worked hard. And so we ended up that summer after 4th grade year, I basically had to kind of cram. My stepmom got me into I think they made a deal with the teachers and said, hey, don't hold him back, we'll get this done. So they allowed me to turn in all my homework and everything in the last 2 months of the year. And so my stepmom was kind of that person that, kind of held me to the academic standard that I needed to be
Good.
at. And so I moved over that summer to live with my dad, and that's when we moved over off Daysvalla Road right down the street from Clark High School.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there that my sports life would change.
Okay.
And
well, now you moved over there, and then you were about to start junior high probably, though, right?
it was between 4th and 5th grade.
Okay.
So I was going to Lock Hill Elementary.
I
right
know
next to
exactly.
Clark.
Yep. Where'd you go junior high?
At Hobby.
At Hobby, the Hobby Hawks.
Yeah,
Very
Robinson
good.
wasn't even there. Daysvalla Road was a country road.
Okay.
When I moved there, there was there's no gas station there. There was no Pizza Hut. There was none of that strip mall.
Sure.
It was all country.
Yeah.
There was even Daysvalla and I-10 was country. If you wanted to get gas or get groceries, you had to go to Wurzbach,
Wow.
and that's where everybody shopped.
Okay.
Daysvalla was barely a 2-lane road. And so anyways, I went to Lock Hill. I was a new kid, new school, and my dad signed me up to play football. And it was a YMCA football league, and it was the Longhorns.
Okay.
And
Number?
50.
50.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 53.
53, okay.
53 at that. We didn't get to pick our numbers there.
Okay.
What would turn out to be my best friend was on the team the year before, and he was already 55. That's the number I wanted.
Okay.
And there's a long story behind that number. But 55 was a linebacker number. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That was where it was at.
Yeah.
And,
What's the story behind the number?
Well,
That's what this is about. Stories.
Yeah, there was a guy that when I would spend weekends at my parents' house or my dad's house, there was a guy that lived a couple streets over, and he was actually Greg Senelek's age.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like 3 years older than me. And this guy was, pardon the expression, but I can't say it any other way. He was Billy Badass. You
Sure.
know what I mean? He was just he had a chin that stuck out like a lumberjack.
Yep.
And, he just had that meanness to him, but he wasn't a mean guy.
Yeah.
But he just had an intensity about him. And those guys kind of watched out for me, Greg and his name was Clint Sanderson.
Okay.
And Clint was at Hobby already, and we were already watching. The one thing I can tell you about the program that I grew up in, it was an institution, and it started in 5th grade, and it went 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and everybody knew who everybody was, and you idolized the guys that were playing at Clark in the silver and black. You knew their names. If they had playing cards, you'd have collected them.
Of course.
I did some ball boy work up there at Clark.
Big deal.
I just walked to practice. I didn't have to be there. I would just go and watch them. Anyway, so Clint he always watched out for me. And later on, when I was a freshman, he was a senior. You go through the normal freshman routine.
Sure.
Nobody really picked on us because we were, football players and stuff, but
finding your way.
You needed somebody to watch out for.
Of course, yep.
And so Clint was that guy, but never like boisterous about it. We weren't best friends like we were when we were kids, but he'd always see me in the hall and give me a head nod.
Give you the what's up, yeah.
I always knew he was there.
Yeah.
And his dad was a cardiologist in San Antonio at the time. Lives in Kerrville now. And he was a 1964 graduate of the Air Force Academy.
Nice.
And I'd already had interest in going there. When I was 4 years old, I told my dad, I want to go to the Air Force Academy.
Really?
We had visited there when I was a kid.
Okay.
And
most 4-year-olds don't say that unless they have some sort of connection to it.
Yeah, and throughout the time back in the day when there was only one ESPN.
Yeah.
Actually, I lived in the days before ESPN existed.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I remember when ESPN came on. Anyway, so my dad and I would stay up until 2 a.m. to watch Air Force, the replay of the Air Force Hawaii game or whatever.
Sure.
And I just loved, watching these guys that were clearly smaller and outgamed go out there and take the fight to them.
That's right. Yeah.
And back then it was Bart Weiss at quarterback and D. Dowis at quarterback. Some of the kind of famous quarterbacks. Troy Calhoun, who's the head coach there now.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to watch them all the time, and so I got connected with him. There was another guy that I grew up with that was a physician as well that went to the Air Force Academy. He's a '74 grad. And he used to come out and throw the football with me when I lived with my mom. And his name's Tom Weiss. I still keep in touch with him here in San Antonio. And so I had some connections to that. I think I drew that out. And, when I heard somebody went there or knew something about it or they were wearing a shirt, I would ask them,
Sure.
How do you know that, Air Force? And I fell in love with, talking about marketing, I fell in love with the lightning bolt.
Oh, dude, I love it. I mean, I'm looking at it right now thinking, oh, man, it's so cool. I want to find a way to put it on my shirt. Jeez, It's awesome.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my company logo has the lightning bolt in it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story. Very cool.
Anyway, so, going on, starting to play football. I had never played football before. I couldn't tell you how to put my pads on. You'll like this one. This is a commonality. Couldn't figure out how to get my jersey on with my shoulder pads on at the same time.
Okay.
Took me a second. My dad said, you'll figure out the trick eventually. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though.
Okay.
I would fight and, get caught and, doing all that stuff. And I figured out if you put the jersey on and then put your shoulder pads on, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a little bit to figure that out, but I did. And I remember when my dad and I, you had to buy your own pads to play in YMCA football.
Okay.
So we went to this store. And I remember the guy's name was Scott because he used to come out and watch us play. This guy that sold the pads to us.
Sure.
And it was over off Blanco Road by Churchill High School.
Okay.
And I remember I got my pads and I didn't.
What was the name of this team? Longhorns. That's right.
Yeah,
that's
we wore burnt orange jerseys and we had the Longhorn on the
Were
white helmet.
you a Longhorn fan at all?
I wasn't.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I grew up. My grandfather was a Sooner fan.
Oh, okay.
He's from northeastern Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
And he was a Sooner fan. I would never call myself a Sooner fan, but that's who I watched football with.
Sure.
My grandpa.
Sure.
So watched them. Being Catholic, I was a Notre Dame fan.
Of course.
I loved Penn State. The way Joe Paterno.
Oh yeah.
I know it didn't end so well.
But it was awesome. It was awesome.
To watch him, just the white helmet with the blue stripe and black shoes. You know what I mean? Nothing fancy. And watching. Some different guys, go through there that would end up in the pros, And
when I was in 6th grade, I fell in love with Notre Dame. I can't tell you what it was exactly, but I just thought of it as a magical place that only the select few get to go actually play football there, like a holy place. And I actually wrote a letter to the president of the university at the time, Reverend O'Malley, shout out, and he wrote me back. I still have the letter, like over there, and it was so thought. I mean, this guy is the president of Notre Dame, and he takes the time to write a nice long letter, handwritten, just saying. I told him I wanted to go play football there. I wanted to get an education there, the whole nine. And he said, "We're looking for young men like you, and remember to keep your grades up, and whatever, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, all that stuff." But it was. He didn't have to do that, and I'm still very touched by that. That was very cool of him to do.
Yeah, it's a neat, again, you didn't have all the sports channels to watch every game that you wanted to play or watch. So you watched, Big Ten football because it was on ABC. And,
Yep.
Big 8 back then and Southwest Conference and all that different stuff. And I was glued to the TV every Saturday.
Sure.
And I watched the Dallas Cowboys. That's about the extent of my pro love of life is the Dallas Cowboys. I don't sit down and watch pro football just to watch football anymore.
I watch college football.
College football is where it's at.
I agree. And high school football, too. I like high school football.
The younger it gets, in my opinion, the more fun it is to watch.
I agree.
Because at every level that you go, it becomes less of a game and more of a job. You know what I mean? And it's small at first, but,
Oh, you're right. Well, when people's jobs depend on your performance, that's when it does get serious.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, playing Longhorn football in the 5th grade, I remember the first time I ever hit anybody. The guy's name was John Warren. Shout out to John, one of my good buddies growing up. Became a Marine, fought in OEF and Operation Enduring Freedom. Was an Aggie, and we were doing some hit drills. The first thing you did helmets for a while just to get used to the helmet. and we were doing our first full pads practice. It was a Saturday, and it was hot, and we squared up. I had never hit anybody with a pair of pads on before, and I remember that kid hit me so hard, and I was just kind of standing there.
What kind of drill were you doing?
It was like across the bow or something.
Okay.
You know, I mean, nothing. You know, I'm sure we didn't really hit that hard.
Okay.
But I remember that I got a blood blister on my thumb, and I was crying. You know.
Oh no.
That hurt, Dad. And my dad's like probably embarrassed. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And he's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "That hurt. He hit me." And my dad told me, and this is literally when he told me this. He goes, "It doesn't hurt if you hit him. It only hurts if you get hit."
That's correct.
And he was dead on right about that. And so I took that to heart because I was like, man, I remember that first hit. I maybe only been hit 3 or 4 times that made that much of an impression on me.
Sure.
And so after that, I was like, okay, here it goes. And, you know, when you're playing peewee football like that, there's only about 3 kids that are, you know, worth a dang out there that know what they're doing. The rest of them are, you know, dad made them play.
That's right.
Whatever. They don't. They're not much. They're not very athletic. They're not anything. But we had some superior athletes on that team. It was pretty amazing. There were 3 of us on that team.
And were all these kids going to eventually go to Clark or being Clark? Okay, cool.
Yeah, all of us were going to go to Clark. It was like elementary school wise, it was like Lock Hill and Colonies North, and then maybe a couple from what was Shenandoah. I think it's Houseman Elementary over there on Vance Jackson, right down the street from Hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And so I showed up at practice that first day, and I was nervous. I didn't know anybody on this side of town, and there was a kid there, big kid like me, already there. We were the first 2 kids there at practice.
Did you do some big kid bonding?
Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, we talked about cheeseburgers.
Hey, guy. Hey, you're big. I'm big. Come on, let's be
We
friends.
talked about tacos, man.
But real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
It is such a cool thing, like how sports can bring out so much in somebody. When I went off to college, I didn't know anybody. You know, I didn't know a soul. But within a couple days, I'm having a good time. I'm with all my buds now. You know, when you share a common interest with somebody, especially with such a team-oriented sport, it's easy, man. You just flow.
Yeah, you know, it's and it's like that it's been like that the rest of my life. You know, you know, when you start a new job, or you know, you move to a new city, or
you look for the big guy.
Well, you just look for you look for the guys that look like they played football.
that have been through the stuff.
Yeah,
that's what I was telling Bernard. Yeah.
And you go, yeah, that kid, you play ball, you know, that kind of thing. And I did that all through the Air Force too, you know. But so you know this guy, who's now my oldest friend in the world, George Alvarez.
Sure.
And so he was 55 and I was 53. And
what position did he play?
we were both inside linebackers.
Nice.
And our dads made these. Our parents have been best friends ever since then too. You know what I mean? Because we played together all the way through. You know, traveling here and doing this and playoffs and all this stuff. And we, our dads made us these, and it was always funny because we were the kids with a little belly, and they made us these half shirts. And they said "mean" in the middle on them. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And what we learned was, you know, there's no technique back then. There's just the better athletes, and then you know the rest of the team. And what we learned was, if the play was going my direction, then I would get outside the runner and trying to turn him in.
Sure.
And George would come right behind and hit him.
Clean it up.
And if it went his way, it went the opposite. You know. And so you're just trying to push people out of the way and get up there. And we pretty much, you know, shut down everybody. There's nothing else to do.
I like it. Mean in the middle.
Yeah, and so there's a third guy in there.
I'm gonna get you a shirt for Christmas. Mean in the middle. Will you wear a cutoff?
I'll wear whatever.
Look
you
at
bet.
that.
You
Okay.
bet, man. We had another guy and so the 3 of us went on to play all the way through together. The only 3 out of that group that played all the way through, and he was our quarterback. His dad was a coach. His name is Pat Burke. I'll give Pat a shout out because we didn't like each other when we were kids.
Sure.
When we were younger like that. And what it was is because he was a real field general.
Okay.
Even at age 9 or 10, he was like, block. I don't have time to throw the ball.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
missed that tackle. You shouldn't have, you know, and he would get in your face about it.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
like, who's this guy?
Sure.
But he was also the kid you didn't want to do hitting drills with either because he would knock your socks off.
Oh,
you
I like
know?
that.
Yeah, he was tough, man. And so we had kind of a love-hate relationship, which we laugh about now. We did a hunting thing. A bunch of the Longhorn kids all got together and went for a hunting trip. And he and I and George sat up and talked about all this stuff and over an adult beverage. And we talked about it, and he and I had talked about it a couple of times, saying, how, we didn't really like each other growing up,
Sure.
and that kind of thing. But I grew to love the guy.
Yeah.
And honestly, through high school, was one of the best people that I've ever blocked for. He knew how to make your block better, which is something that is unique and I've only seen in a few players in my life that I've played with. You see it, on Sundays a lot. You see, because there's no such thing as a hole in the NFL. You got a sliver of daylight that you got to get through.
Sure.
And in college, that's a little bit bigger, but not much, And so he just knew how to make those things work. And he was a good athlete, fast, had a great arm. We played baseball together too. And so it was the three of us, man. I played center on the other side of the ball. It was back then you had weight limits, and so if you had a red X, you weighed too much to carry the football. So the only way you could carry the football is if you picked it off, and then you could run with it.
Oh, how many picks first year? How many did you have?
I think I had 4 picks and about 6 sacks.
Any pick sixes?
No pick sixes.
Okay.
I wasn't fast enough to.
4 picks, 6 sacks. That's pretty darn good.
It was good. What I found out in 5th grade was that I loved football.
Okay.
I mean, it was I named it later. It's there's a beast inside of you, and you got to feed the beast, man. And football's about the only thing that does it.
Yeah. Closest thing to it. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
You get tired. You get to hit people, and it's all legal. You don't get in trouble unless you do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys right and left of you that are doing the same thing, and football is one of those things. It's like a waltz. If everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can't stop it.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, anyways, like when I say we're institutionalized, I mean, there was a game every year when you were in 5th and 6th grade that the head coach from Clark would come watch.
That's a big deal.
And we knew when it was coming.
Sure.
And his daughter was.
Who was the head coach at the time?
Mike Robbins.
Mike
was
Robbins.
The coach.
Mm-hmm.
Legendary Texas coach, man. Just a fantastic individual. A tough coach.
Good.
I mean, tough.
Yeah.
He was mean.
He
was mean.
That's if you drop 2 toughs, that means they can get a little vulgar, huh?
He was intimidating, but a good intimidating, a fatherly intimidating, and so you always wanted to please him. You know what I mean? You always wanted to work hard for him and do whatever you had to do to put a smile on his face and put the ball in the end zone. Anyway, so you wanted to have the best game that you could have. And so we went out there and really started to put the wood to this team and beat them pretty good. That year, in our 5th grade year, I think we went 5-3, and we lost a couple of games just more because we just didn't know what we were doing. You know what I mean? Some of the guys were in their 2nd year playing, but I was in my 1st year, so it wasn't unheard of to just completely whiff and miss a tackle.
Sure.
Or miss
Well, you
a
don't know
blocking
technique
assignment.
at that time, so you're just kind of trying to be an athlete, do what you can. And some kids who have had a year or 2 under their belt know a little technique, and man, that's why those technically sound teams can beat a team with better athletes.
Well, I learned a lesson that year too. Is we did some physical conditioning at that point, but it wasn't really a focus, and there was obviously no off-season program. You know what I mean? Because off-season program was basketball and baseball. You know what I mean? And baseball's not exactly. Little League baseball is not exactly a stay in shape sport.
No, you run the bases at the end of the deal, and that's about it. Yeah,
you can run when you get in trouble.
Yep. Yeah.
But anyways, I learned a couple things in that first year, and I remember it. And I don't know that I learned them in that year, but I look back and realized that that's what that was you can't take a play off. You know what I mean? If one guy takes a play off, he can cost a whole deal. You know what I mean? Look at the punter from Michigan. And not that he took the play off,
I understand.
But it's just one play like that can mess the whole thing up, especially when you're playing in good competition.
The card does not work if one of the pieces is not firing right. That's how it is. And that's why I love it, though. That's why I love football so much, is because it's the ultimate team sport where if you have all 11 guys doing what they're supposed to be doing, you are gonna have success.
Yeah.
But if you have one or two guys that aren't, or that take that play off, and if you take that play off and then you go into film the next day and you take that play off, anybody who's taken that play off and has been to film the next day, you know what happens.
It's
there.
embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. It's tough.
And I always thought it was funny because Coach Robbins always had a thing. Film don't lie, boys. That's what he'd always say.
The eye in the sky don't
Yeah.
lie. That's what my coach would say.
And so a lot of the motivation later on in life became, I don't want to look bad on Saturday morning.
All about it, yeah.
And I want to look good on the film.
Sure.
And so that's a good motivator, and then you get to learn some technique on what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. So my dad started filming our games in 6th grade, and we went
Shout out Ralph.
Yeah, Pops was hooking us up, and he had that. He looked like he was with Eyewitness News, one of these big VHS with a shoulder carrier, and had to play here. And he would set up and film the games, and like he wouldn't even really watch the game. He was filming it, and trying to get everybody, because he developed this thing where at Clark we had what was called a Cougar head, and for a turnover block or touchdowns, 100 yards rushing, you get
a sticker for your helmet.
Yeah, you get these things, and so he developed that with the Longhorns, and it was we called it horn hits, and it was an H with the Longhorn going through it.
Oh, that's nice.
And so he would review. Saturday was a game, and then I'd go spend the night at George's house. Well, he'd spend the rest of the evening on going over there. So Monday at practice, he could hand out the horn hits.
Sure.
That was a huge motivator as a kid.
That's still a huge motivator when you're in college. I know how pumped up guys get. You look at, we did it in college. Certain years, you look at schools like Ohio State and Michigan now, and it's still a big deal. Because it's a way to brag and a way to show you're the man without having to say a thing.
Yeah, and that is it. And it can be intimidating to line up across from a guy that's got a whole helmet full of whatever they call them.
Sure.
And so he started doing that, and of course, it was funny because then it became sort of a competition, and which made us really good.
Yeah.
We were good. I got to tell you my tragedy in 6th grade.
Your 6th grade tragedy.
This is my 6th grade
Wow.
tragedy.
Okay.
And a big lesson learned here for you younger guys out there. My mother, my stepmother, was always insistent that when we sat down for dinner, there was no football talk at the table.
Okay.
This was going to be the half hour that we didn't talk about football, okay, or baseball or whatever was the season, but specifically football. So, we had to watch the news so we could talk about something in the current events. Current events was a big thing.
Sure.
At our table.
That's cool.
And academics was number one. My parents were sticklers to that. They said if you're, when I was in middle school, that was 6th grade, middle school, they didn't, if you had an 88, which was a B back then, there better be a damn good explanation as to why you only have an 88. That was a big thing for them.
Yep.
And my stepmother, she used to tell me all the time, football's not going to put food on your table, son.
Yep.
And,
it only does for a small person, for 1% of the population.
Well, I think it's a larger percent of the population than we think, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I wouldn't have gotten into the Air Force Academy without football.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And I wouldn't have anything that I have right now without the Air Force Academy. So,
Good point.
I might have something else, but I wouldn't have what I have.
Yes, I understand.
And so I remember when I graduated from the academy, I gave my stepmom a big hug, said I love you, and I proved you wrong.
Yeah.
Football put food on the table, man. Here's the degree right here.
That's right. Yeah.
And she smiled and laughed. And
Very good point.
But so in the 6th grade, I think we were 7-0, and we had been just destroying everybody. I think at this point, like George and I had about 6 or 7 picks each. We were shutting people out.
Picking machines.
It was. I think George and myself and Pat Burke were. I think we were all in the run, and each of us at this point had like 35 of those horn hits on our head, and it was like neck and neck. Who was ahead, And he was a quarterback, so he scored touchdowns and stuff. So we were trying to do everything we can. And I think my dad was actually harder on me because he knew that if I had the most on the team, it was just because my dad was the one that was doing that. So I think he shortchanged me a couple of times when we had big games, you know, and he'd give me, he's like, you got 10 this week. And I'm like, man, I counted 14 in my head. You know what I mean? And he's like, you got 10.
Good.
Shut up.
Good. I like that.
Excuse me. And so anyways, you know, we were doing this, and I came home, and we used to get these 6-week report cards. Well, we also got a 3-week midterm type deal, progress report, and I had an 82 in a class.
What class was it?
It was, I think it was social studies.
Oh, come on. Come on.
And this is why this happened.
Okay.
And my parents were just angry as they could all be, and here's why. And I, as a parent now, I get this so much more. I had 100 on just about every assignment and every test that I took in that class, and I had 2 zeros because I just didn't turn in just didn't do
assignment.
it. Yeah, just decided I wasn't going to do that, whatever. And my parents held me out of the 8th game of the season.
Oh,
and it was a
good
big game for us. There was another team that was created, or that was part of the same league, but it was from the same set of schools.
Okay.
Kind of what we called the B team, you know what I mean? And they hated that. And we would all be teammates later at Clark, you know, and then Hobby even. And but we would call, you know, we'd be out on the playground, and you know, oh, we're playing the B team this weekend, you know. And so my parents helped me out. The head coach called my dad and was like, would you please reconsider? And he's like, nope.
Did he really? He called your dad and said, oh, wow.
And
I understand, but there's a higher priority there, you know?
I know how hard that was for my dad to do. I know
of course.
It would be really hard for me to do with my son. I would do it.
Sure.
It would be hard. And on top of everything else, they made me go to the game and sit in the stands and watch my team lose our first game of the season.
Wow, they put it on you like that, huh?
Yeah. And so I got the message.
Sure.
You know, grades come first. The good news about that was that was the philosophy at Hobby and Clark, was you don't have bad conduct grades. You know, the N's and U's. You remember that from?
Sure.
And you don't have bad grades. I mean, you know, their version of bad grades was don't flunk, because, you know, you can't play if you flunk. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so I got the message from my parents, and it was time to, you know, not do stupid things like that. And of course I did from time to time. I was, you know, you're a teenage kid.
Yes.
I always joke around about middle school with my wife. I'd rather go back to 3 years in Afghanistan than spend 3 years back in middle school.
I kind of had the same feeling.
It's a rough time.
Yeah.
As a boy, you're going through a lot of changes.
Making that transition. Yeah.
You got oily skin. You're getting pimples. You got braces.
Yeah.
You know, you're starting to recognize girls a little bit.
Sure.
And it's a rough time.
It is.
Know?
It is. I remember we had so much success my 7th grade year. We didn't lose a game. But 7th grade was one of my hardest years because I was going through all those changes, and I was just kind of freaked out by it. I guess more than anything, I wasn't very confident in myself at that point. I never had that issue before.
Well, and you know, so I got the message. We didn't lose another game the rest of the season. My teammates were mad at me, and I got it. You know what I mean? I let them down, and you know, I made a promise to myself that I would never, you know, be a bad teammate again. You know what I mean? Because that's what it was about. You know, I was being selfish. You know, my parents set a standard, and I knew that if I didn't do this, that I would get, you know, suspended from the game.
Yep.
So we came back, won the rest of the games, champions of the league, all that good stuff. We actually got to play that team back again.
The B team.
The B team at the end of the year, and we squashed them. You know what I mean? It was great.
I like it.
And anyway, so, you know, moving on to, you know, 6th grade was, you know, baseball and all that stuff. And I played basketball. I'm a terrible basketball player. Everybody's got that one thing they're not good at. It's basketball for me.
I'm pointing at myself as well.
Yeah. I didn't understand basketball. All they kept doing was saying, get your butt lower. And I'm like, I don't think it can go any lower, man. My thighs are screaming at me right now. We had a guy named Coach Campsey who was just mean. You know, he was a mean coach. I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. I thought he picked on me all the time.
Oh, God, I had such a similar experience.
But what you realize is that he saw something in you and wanted to make you better, but that was his version of doing it. If he'd have just told me that, I would have embraced it. But he didn't never say that.
Well, it's crazy how some of the best coaches I've had have been able to understand players and personalities and know they can be this way with this player and they need to be this different way with another player. The coaches who haven't had as much success that I've been around have been the guys that are, this is just how I am no matter what to this particular player. And then sometimes they miss out on connecting because like a kid, like, well, this is how I was. If you just immediately just started like coming down on me and screaming at me and just flipping out on me, when I was younger, I was shut down. You know, I because my dad coached me a lot, and he didn't really coach me like that. He was more of a teaching coach. As I got older, I kind of appreciated that, you know, kind of getting yelled at too, because, you know, it does build a tough skin. But when you're younger, I don't know if that's the best approach when you're coaching up kids.
Yeah, you know, it was an eye-opening experience, and he pushed me real hard. I got better, you know, but he had midway through our 7th grade year. That was 8th grade. So 7th grade year, we were those kids that hadn't developed yet. We were still in the middle of that change, you know.
Me too.
And I think I was about 5'2", weighed about 165 pounds, a bowling ball, you know. And we went out there and we got destroyed in just about every game we played. We couldn't.
Yeah.
We were slower and weaker. And
see, our team's one of the teams destroying because I was like one of 2 kids that hadn't gone through that change yet, and the rest of my team had.
Yeah.
So they were grown men just destroying, and I was like, oh, this is easy.
I remember going to what we refer to as the hood to go play. In Northside, there's no hood in the Northside.
No,
you know?
No.
And it was Sol Ross Middle School, which feeds Holmes.
Okay.
And this was back in the day when Keith and Kerry Cash and and Johnny Walker and all those guys were at Holmes. So Holmes was a powerhouse.
Big deal. Yep.
But it was kind of a school with a bunch of guys that had gone through the change already. You know what I mean? They were probably supposed to be in 8th or 9th grade, but they were only in 7th grade. You know, that kind of deal.
And then you hear the parents in the stands. Well, that kid, he should be in high school.
Kid had a mustache, and we used to joke that they had kids on the sidelines, you know what I mean, waiting for them after the game.
Oh, yeah. So funny.
So we went to
Sol
Sol Ross, and this was like the 3rd game of the season. And these kids, they knew how to intimidate us, too. We were the preppy kids from the north side, and they were throwing rocks at our bus. Our coach told us to put our helmet on before we even got within 5 blocks of the game.
You're telling a story I had a very similar experience in 7th grade. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and so we lost the game before we even showed up.
That's half the battle, man.
Yeah.
I actually respect teams that can win that intimidation battle before you get on the field. I think it's awesome.
They did it. They were bigger than us, and they knew how to manhandle us. The problem with them was that was the biggest that they were going to get. So
sure.
we came back in between 7th and 8th grade. So we lost a bunch of games. I think we only won 2 games that year. We came back the next year. I moved to 3-tech at this point, which I loved 3-tech. 3-tech's like being an offensive lineman on the defense. You can hold, you can throw people around because all you're trying to do is keep them off the linebackers.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then maybe you can make a tackle here and there.
Yeah.
And I loved it. 3-tech was a great deal, and that looked like what was going to happen to me when I went up to Clark.
You're kind of finding your spot at that 3-tech.
Yeah.
Okay.
And defense was fun to play. I mean, you could there's no rules. I mean, you just make sure you don't, hit somebody too late or, we didn't have any of those helmet-to-helmet things. That's how we were taught to hit.
That's how we were taught, too. It's crazy.
Yeah. So moved to 3-tech that in 7th grade, and then in between 7th and 8th grade, I showed back. So I was 5'2", 165 pounds. When I showed up for 8th grade football, I was 5'10".
Whoa.
And weighed about 190 pounds. I went through just a major growth spurt.
Were you lifting weights at anything, or
not
just
yet?
Okay,
my dad
so
wouldn't let me lift weights until I had hair in my armpits.
Gotcha. That's a good rule.
That's not the location he told me, but that's the one I'll share with you on the air.
Thank you. That's a good rule. That is a good rule.
And he just said, hey, do push-ups and run. You know what I mean? Because your body doesn't have the hormones to make you're going to hurt your joints and all that stuff. And he was right. So I never lifted or anything like that. During this time, I was going through, I think, a little bit of transition still from that time of moving back in. It's 3 years later, but, just kind of feeling my oats with my dad. And I was doing really well in school, but I was, for lack of a better way to put it, I was a smart ass. I had a comment for everything a teacher would say. I was disruptive. And it was because I didn't have to do anything. I would finish a test in 10 minutes while the other people were doing it, and then I'd start goofing around and distracting people. And so I had bad conduct grades. So I remember at the end of 7th grade, my dad got tired of trying to figure out how to discipline me. He couldn't do it. He's like, you're growing taller than me. You know, it seems silly to spank a 13-year-old kid. You know what I mean? That's not working, you know, whatever. And I got my share of whoopings. I deserved every single one of them. And so I got in trouble one day, and my dad said, get your tennies on. And we lived in the woods of Chavano. And back then, it's still country area. So my dad drove in the car, and I got to run behind him to Hobby Middle School. It's 2 miles.
Okay.
And we got to Hobby, and it was in the afternoon, like a Thursday afternoon. And he started running me. We started with hundreds, then it was 40s, and then we would go rest by doing sit-ups on the bleachers with my feet up above my head. And then when I couldn't do another sit-up, he said, turn over and put your feet up and do push-ups now.
Now, did he tell you why this was happening?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you? Okay, all right,
I,
all right.
I knew when I walked in the house, I knew I was in. I thought I was just in for another whooping, and we'd call it a day. You
Sure.
know?
Way worse. Whooping get done quick, and you.
They could still spank you at school.
Mm-hmm.
You could get licks from the principal. And I remember the principal would tell me, well, you want licks, or you want me to tell your parents? I'm like,
licks.
I'll get 2 licks from you. I'll get about 10 from my dad, so
Yep.
I'll take the licks here, you know. And eventually they figured out that wasn't working either, so they didn't even give me the option anymore. They'd just tell my dad. And I would, you know, I was just being disrespectful, you know what I mean? That's all there was to it. And that wasn't the way my parents raised me. And I wasn't like that around them, just trying to figure out who I was.
Sure. Everyone goes through it.
And it had a lot to do with girls.
Of
and
course.
Trying to show off a little bit.
Want to pop off and sound cool to girls.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And I wasn't cool. You know what I mean? I was a dork. I was a nerd. The only reason I could even pretend to be a cool kid is because George was a cool kid and I hung out with him.
Okay.
You know, he'd say, we're going to the movies tonight. And I'm like, I can't wait to watch a movie. And he's getting mad at me because I'm trying to watch a movie and they're talking. And I'm like, I'm trying to watch a movie here. He's like, we don't come to the movies to watch a movie, man. The girls are here.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep.
And at the end of the night at the movie theater, when I would inevitably, be sitting there next to a girl, couldn't say a word to her, George was such a good friend that he would pat me on the shoulder and say, we'll get him next week. No, we'll try again.
Oh, good man. That's a good man right there.
Yeah,
That's a good wingman right there.
He was a good friend, man.
Very good.
He is a good friend
Sure.
still to this day.
Sure.
And anyway, so, that was this whole thing was just, bubbling up in me. And so it was really funny because my dad finally decided, he said, well, if you're going to be a jerk at school, you're at least going to be in great shape to play football next year. And I learned after about 2 or 3 of those experiences, there's a hill at the back of Hobby Middle School on the other side of the tennis court that he used to make me run to. And that was the very first time I ever threw up from exercise. And
I've done it 3 times in my life. I can remember each 3.
Yeah.
Full detail.
I threw up, and my dad was a nurse, so he knew how to keep me hydrated. No, just barely hydrated, but hydrated, know. And what was funny about it is the coaches would see me out there. And they were like, man, so proud of me because I was out there in the off season getting in shape for the next season of football,
Look at him coming out here putting that work in on his own, huh?
And, in 7th grade, I got cut from the basketball team. Every football player made the basketball team. If you're on the A team, you got made the basketball team. I didn't. I got cut. It's the first time I ever been cut from anything.
Not a good feeling.
Not the last time either. And, my dad was like, hey, you can't be good at everything, man. Let's go focus on baseball and get ready for the football season. And I think that added to my attitude problem at school. I had to be cooler because I didn't make the basketball team. Little did I know there wasn't a single girl that realized I didn't make the basketball team.
Man, they could care less.
But I thought it was a big deal. So, anyways, we get on into the 8th grade thing. I'm starting to figure out and fix my attitude problem, but it was still there. And we get into 8th grade, and we're bigger than everybody now all of a sudden, and we're destroying everybody out there, And we win the district championship that year.
Nice.
And nothing remarkable. We just stomped everybody. It was pretty fun. I think we ended up tying one school, and it was Rudder, right up here. And they were half of them were gonna feed Clark, and the other half were gonna go to Marshall. And so we knew the guys because we played baseball with them and stuff like that. And
was that a rivalry? I mean, I know both schools are not where they used to be, but since I guess guys could feed into both schools, was that a rivalry for you when both schools were pretty good?
Yeah, I would say, it was, you definitely wanted to beat them because in our minds we were playing for our position at Clark. So if we beat them here, then I'm already automatically the A team, whatever. You know what I mean? At freshman football next year.
Gotcha.
And what we didn't know was that the guys at Rudder didn't grow up in the football program that we grew up in. And so they weren't ready for, there were some that were, you know what I mean? But for the most part, they weren't ready for high school football. So I showed up my freshman year.
Well, real quick. So you're showing up your freshman year. What's the shape of the Clark football program at this point?
We were a powerhouse, man. We were in a situation. This is when the book Friday Night Lights came out, and we were in that book because we were, ranked in the state, and one of the people that might be able to knock off, Permian. And we were good.
Yeah.
Clint Sanderson, that guy I told you about before, he was a senior, and Bubba Smith played at Texas.
What is it like to be? My high school was not a power like that, but going to play high school football was a big deal. I could still remember all the guys ahead of me, and they're still a big deal to me. They were heroes of mine and stuff. But what is it like being a young kid coming into his freshman year, showing up at this powerhouse with this honor of, it's go time. I get to play for the Clark Cougars,
I was terrified.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why the people around me weren't terrified. You know what I mean? Why my peers, my friends weren't terrified.
Oh, I'm sure they were. They just didn't want to say it.
Well, yeah, I read something in Andre Agassi's book. You ever read that book? It's a good book. Talks about a lot of adversity that he went through.
Sure.
But there's a statement in there that Andre's dad said to him. He said, no. It wasn't Andre Agassi's book. I'm sorry. It was Rob Lowe's book. And Rob Lowe was taking his son to college, his oldest. And he said, Dad, I'm nervous, man. These other kids don't look like they're scared, I'm terrified. And he said, son, you should never compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. Yeah. It's never going to match up.
Yep.
And so when I read that, I was like, man, I wish I'd have thought about that when I was a freshman in high school or a freshman at the academy, any of that stuff. And but we got there, and it was like, man, we're in the freshman cage, which stinks, and it's hot. There's no air conditioning, whatever.
Probably have carpet back there. If it was like our place, we had carpet in the locker room. It stunk. It was wet. But it's where as a freshman you probably need to be at that point.
Yeah, two to a locker.
Yeah.
You basically had to change in shifts because you couldn't fit everybody in there. You know, and you got your stuff, and you had 5 or 6 year old pads that were passed down, and you had the old practice jerseys, and they were torn up and shoelaced back together.
Sure, we tried to make them look cool. They were not cool. I'm looking back at pictures of us when we were in high school as a freshman, and the jerseys were so pitiful.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was honored because it was a former high school jersey that a former varsity jersey that I was getting to wear, and it would, looking back, it doesn't look cool, but it was a big deal to me then.
Well, I remember. The big thing at Clark was you didn't get your decals on your helmet till you were on varsity.
I like that.
So, and you may not even had a silver helmet. You might have had a white helmet. Oh. You know what I mean? And with freshmen and JV and stuff. And so, I remember, got my silver helmet at least. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, this is pretty cool.
What was the decal at the time when you played?
It was a C with a cougar coming out of it.
Nice.
It had the teeth and all that stuff. Yeah. And we had some stripes down the middle, so silver and black.
Nice.
It's a tough-looking helmet.
Yeah.
And
silver and black, can't go wrong. Oakland Raiders, that's my favorite pro football uniform, silver and black. Those colors are
it's good.
It's
hard.
Good.
Yeah, it's real good. So I remember, going out there, and, we weren't practicing with varsity. We were freshmen, and they don't cut in Texas, so there's 120 freshmen out there. And, I think before August was over, you're down to 80. You know what I mean? There's about 40 kids that realize they're never going to see the daylight of a football field.
And you probably didn't do any type of conditioning or didn't prepare for an August with pads on in high school. And
yeah, it was pretty. I remember just going water break to water break during that year because it was definitely, the tempo was starting to get more. It was different. For the first time in my life playing just a freshman, the tempo was getting picked up.
What a good point, man. And how that tempo changes from when you're doing your YMCA football, your Taifa football, your junior high, and that's the thing that I preach to my young guys is you don't understand what kind of tempo you're in for. Especially you guys who have big aspirations going on and playing college football. I was like, that tempo is what's going to set you apart from these other guys. So when you actually show up in 7th or 8th grade, when you show up in high school, you're going to be used to go, go, go. It's going to seem slow to you, if you start that. But that's when I got to college, that was when it was the big eye opener of, man, I didn't prepare for a tempo like this.
Yeah, the tempo of when you step into Division I football, there's a huge tempo change.
Yeah,
huge from day one when you get in there, and that attitude starts in the locker room. But I noticed it then that you weren't going to be able to be an average player and make it happen up here. You're going to have to start getting better at what you were doing. And that meant getting in the weight room. That's when I started really getting in the weight room. And I had worked out over the summer and all that stuff and gotten ready for it.
At that point, were guys using supplements and stuff like they do now, or no? Not like
not
protein
yet.
powder or weight gain or anything like that? No.
Steroids were around, and there
Sure.
were some guys that were using them.
Yeah.
You could tell.
You could tell guys use. Yeah.
Especially back then, because they weren't as clean as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
So there was guys that were just raged out. And,
Sure.
when you're 15 years old, benching 400 pounds, that's not natural.
No.
So I was never a particularly strong guy or particularly fast guy or whatever. I was mean, sometimes to my own detriment. You know what I mean? But
I like mean guys on the line, though. I was
you
telling
have to
Ben.
be.
And Ben made a good comment about that, how if you don't have that you don't have to be like that off the field, but if you don't have that in you, it's probably not the right position for you.
Well, and that's the thing, and attitude becomes such a big part of who you are when you start doing that, because in my mind, since I was in the 5th grade, I always knew that I was going to start for the Clark Cougars, and I was going to go on to play football somewhere.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some ignorance involved in how difficult that was going to be, and I was okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, looking back on it, had I known how difficult it was going to be, I might have just said, no, I don't want to do it, But I just knew that was going to happen. And I was part of a group of kids, of guys that all had that mentality. We all of us were going to go play college football. All of us were going to be on scholarship. All of us, we were going to go be state champions. We knew it, and we just believed it.
That's so cool.
And so we that's when we started getting in the weight room. That's the first time that anybody ever assigned me a lifting program, was high school.
Game changer.
Rudimentary is all get out.
Okay.
Squat, bench, clean. That's it.
Deadlift? No.
Nope, no deadlift
okay.
yet. The clean was new.
Sure.
All of us had benched and squatted.
Yeah.
But that's it, and there was no technique as to how to get better at that. It was just keep pushing up weight until you can push up more and then push up more. And I was never a particularly strong bench presser. What I learned later is that's a pretty useless one-time max measurement. But I had some athletic ability, and at this point in time, I was still playing 3-tech, and we played both ways, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, even 10th grade. In JV, started playing, continued to play both ways a little bit, and so I was playing tight end, and because I could catch a football.
Sure. What kind of offense was Clark running at that time?
The wing tee.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Like every other school. Okay, I got you. Yep.
We were a running offense,
Mm-hmm.
running back by committee. Never real strong in the receiver department. We had some good receivers. We just didn't know how to develop them, and it wasn't a thing. I mean, Andre Ware was just then. The run and gun was just coming out and all that stuff, and everybody thought it was gimmicky and all that stuff. And Coach Robbins' theory was you could tell the guys across the line what the play is. If you run it correctly, they can't
stop it. Yeah.
And there's some truth to that. But we were running 220 trap, 228 sweep, 40s, the power, out of the power eye, whatever. And very simple.
Where were y'all playing home games at varsity?
North side.
Okay.
At, not well, you know, the
410.
the Gus wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was the Dub.
Yeah.
Dub fairs. The Dub wasn't there. That was all country land out there.
There was just one stadium.
one stadium
That everyone kind of, how did that work?
You played a 5-game. We only had 5 teams.
Who was in the
North side
district
back
at the
then.
time?
It was Marshall,
Okay.
Holmes, Clark, Jay, and Taft.
The originals. Okay.
And then Southwest would join our district. They were their own district, but they would join us in 28-5A.
Okay.
But anyway, so there was now there's like 11
There's a lot, yeah.
high schools. They have 2 divisions now.
Yeah.
They
I think it's a 10, yeah.
they have a playoff game now
Yep.
to see who the district championship is. So, you know, at that point we, played a freshman schedule. We're still whooping up on everybody, you know. And it starts to become high stakes even in freshman year because you know you're going to play these guys for the next 4 years. You know what I mean?
Getting to know
And
your
so
competitor.
the intimidation starts at your freshman year when you're
No doubt.
14 years old and
Yes.
you want to get out there and show these guys that you can play. And so I was playing 3-tech and tight end. We didn't throw much, so I think in my high school career of 4 years playing tight end, I think I caught like 9 passes.
That's pretty darn good.
And 1 2-point conversion. That's the only score I've ever had in my life.
Okay, don't lie. How did it feel?
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
awesome.
It was,
Yeah.
you know, it was just one of the. It was actually it was freshman year,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a play designed for me. It was a play that we put in to play Churchill in our mini Gucci Bowl, but we didn't run it. It was called Churchill Special because we saw what their linebackers would do. So we'd shift, and the linebackers would move out of the way. I would take like 5 steps and turn around and catch the ball and then do whatever.
Yeah.
We never called it. I kept telling Coach, my Churchill Special will work. He's like, no, we're winning like 50-0. What's not working today?
Yeah, exactly,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I just wanted to catch a ball,
Sure,
you know.
sure.
And I honestly, you know, like I'd intercepted stuff before. I'd recovered fumbles before. So I've been tackled, but those aren't real tackles. You know what I mean? Those are people dragging you down or doing whatever. I'd never been tackled in open field.
By guys who tackle. Like that's
who are
what
trying,
they
that's
do.
their job
Yeah.
is to tackle people. And so I remember freshman year. No, that was sophomore year. So freshman year, I did get to score a 2-point conversion, which was fun. I caught a couple other balls, and I didn't know how to keep my feet. You know what I mean? Like I knew how to catch a ball real well, but then it was like, okay, now what? You know, I was always part of the offensive line. I never did any, you know, push the helmet down, drill or whatever, you know. So it wasn't really in my nature. In the wing T, the tight end is essentially a fourth tackle.
Yep.
And you run a lot of double tight. And so the coaches told me I was going to be a 3-tech. You're going to be a 3-tech, buddy. That's your job. But we had some kids coming up behind us that were pretty talented. A guy named Marcus Hurd, who played at A&M. Just a gigantic fella, you know what I mean? And mean as heck on the field, nice as can be off the field.
Mm-hmm.
You know, good and just a good guy. But we saw those guys coming up, and I'm like, you know, realistically, you look around you and you go, I'm not going to play over this kid. He's going to be a junior and start. You know he is, and that's what's best for this team.
Sure.
And so I kept telling Coach, Coach, I think I'll be a better tight end than a 3-tech. No, you're going to be a 3-tech. You're going to be a 3-tech. And finally, Coach Robbins, I think, realized that too. And so he said, I'll tell you what, we'll let you play tight end if you can get your 40 under 5.
Okay. What were you running
like
at
a
the time?
5'1".
Oh, okay, that's doable.
Not bad for a
That's
fat kid,
doable.
you know?
Yeah.
And so
Gambasi said that he was running sub 5 in high. There's no way. Ben, I hope you're listening to this. There's no way. I didn't want to call you out. Calling you out now. No way you went sub 5. Anyway, continue.
we run sub 530s on the offensive line, man. You know, we could, you know, as an offensive lineman, you take pride in the fact that you can beat anybody in the first 5 yards.
Yep.
That's your game
Sure.
right there. Everything else after that is cake. You know, so my dad and I started working real hard. I used to go to Colorado in the summers to spend time with my Uncle Ray.
What a place to train. Jeez.
Training at, you know, 7,000 feet is awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You come back down to Texas and
Little did you know you were preparing for your college career.
Right. And I knew I wanted to go there, so I wanted to, you know, go visit that place and do all that. So I'd spend, you know, the last 3 weeks before football started, I would spend in Denver with my Uncle Ray. And Uncle Ray was like a second dad to me, and I would go train. I remember the very first time I was doing wind sprints indoors on a turf field in Denver, not realizing what the true effect of the altitude was going to have on me. And I was doing like 50s, and somewhere around the 35 marker, I fell down. I literally like blacked out and ended up on the turf because I'd been running real hard, and I ran out of oxygen.
Sure.
And I got up and looked around, and I was like, man, I hope nobody saw that because that's embarrassing. I had turf burn on my knees.
That kid, he must be from Texas.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Exactly.
If I was a professional athlete, I feel like I would live in Colorado during the off season to condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would pick somewhere like Breckenridge and go run hills and like Jerry Rice style, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. He's the ultimate conditioning dude. I love him.
Yeah, running hills with a backpack on, sprinting up, sprinting down. He was amazing shape, that guy. But so lifting, like I said, I wasn't really a strong guy from a one-time max type deal. I never benched 300 pounds in high school. That was a big marker for the big guys. I was the only one on the line that couldn't bench 300 pounds. It used to it was one of those things that sticks in you, and you're like, I wish I just couldn't do it. I'd get to 290, push that up at 300, just couldn't do it. I think it was a lot of mental also.
Oh, sure.
And I squatted like maybe 350, 375, something like that. And it was to the point where I didn't even pay attention to what I did because it wasn't up to what everybody else was doing. So I just kept doing what I was doing, which was,
I remember having feelings like that.
Reps and dips and, things that were making me strong. And, this one guy I used to work out with was an ex-Marine and bodybuilder. And he said, man, offensive linemen, squats are good because they teach you how to get your butt down, but you're going to make your strength on the leg press. And so, I could leg press like 1,400 pounds, you know what I mean? I could rep that, get in there and make that happen. And you could feel your whole body working through that. And so that's, I focused on that kind of training. And my dad was like, well, you in order to get stronger, you're doing the thing, but in order to get this, you want to play tight end, you need to get your 5 or your 40 under 5. So I took, my brother was big in karate. My brother's 5 years younger than me. He was big in karate. He's like a national champion.
Wow.
In Kuksul.
I don't know what that is.
It's just a form
of karate.
Yeah,
okay.
Form of karate. It's a Korean form of karate.
Okay.
And so my dad said, you need to go take Kuksul over the summer.
Okay.
So I suited up in my little my gi, got out there, and I thought we were going to go in there and do a bunch of kicks and punches. I had never really paid much attention to it except for at tournaments with my brother. And we spent probably the first hour of every day stretching. And I was so inflexible. You know what I mean? I was we didn't focus on it. Was all about strength. That's it. You know what I mean?
A lot of football players aren't. The best football players I've ever been around are in the fastest and the least injured, but the most flexible.
Yeah. And our meals, it was like eat as much as you possibly can of whatever it is that you can shove down
Throw
your
it
belly,
down,
you know. So, you go to Sombrero Rosa and eat 10 bean and cheese tacos.
Sombrero Rosa, I don't know where that is. Where is that?
It's where Pasha is now.
Oh, okay.
That's why it
looks like sombrero.
Yeah,
10. You were throwing down 10?
Oh, for first lunch.
Wow, that's serious.
You walk in, they were 69 cents, man. You walk in there with $7 and get you 10 tacos, man. And so we weren't training. We didn't have the knowledge that they have now. It started to happen in college. We started to see some of the fitness, some of the flexibility drills and plyometrics and things like that were used to combine strength and agility together. But we didn't really have that. We did shuttle runs and we did sprints and we did lifted weights. And so I started doing this stretching thing, and it was painful. I'm like, man, we're going to kick something. Now I want to kick something. You know what I mean? We can't even get to the kicking part because we're stretching all the time. We're doing all these crazy. I couldn't even do most of them the first time. You know? But what happened was, after about a month of going 4 or 5 times a week, my brother, of course, loved it because he was really good at it. I mean, at one point in time, I think he was registered in the state of Texas as his lethal weapon. You know what I mean?
Come on.
As a 9-year-old kid. Man,
That's not a serious thing.
I'm not even kidding you, dude.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not think that was a serious thing.
He was like a 27th degree black belt. We'll give a shout out to Dominic, man. He's one of my best friends in the world.
How old was Dom when he was registered as lethal weapons?
He came back from Houston. I didn't go on this trip. He came back from Houston with my parents with this big trophy, national champion, whatever. And so he was really good at it. He could jump off Like he'd get up on your desk here and jump off and land in the splits. You know what I mean? He was flexible. And,
That's Van Damme type stuff.
yeah, he was good at it.
Okay.
And he was a scrawny kid, so it was good for him. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Great for your confidence and self-esteem. And,
Yeah, you got Big Brother, who's a freshman in high school, is 6'2" and 240 pounds, and then Dominic's rocking 5 years younger than me, and he's like 80 pounds and 5 foot nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, when am I going to get my growth spurt?
Sure.
We always thought he had tapeworm.
Oh God, my 7th grade coach used to tell me that
He would eat like a
yeah.
horse.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He just could not keep it on.
That's so funny.
And anyway, so I did this, and my dad would meet me and pick me up. I couldn't drive yet. I wasn't quite 16, and my dad would pick me up, and we'd go to Northside Stadium, where Paul Taylor Fieldhouse is, and he would talk to somebody, and they'd let us in that place, and we'd go run.
Ralph making it happen.
Run bleachers.
I like
run
it.
bleachers, and so I, karate for 3 hours in the morning, and would go lift some weights, and then my dad would pick me up. And I don't know how he did it, because we do the same job now. We're business partners. I don't know how he had time to do that, but he made time to do it.
Sure.
I think he went back to work after we went to sleep.
You do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And anyway, so we started doing that. Well, I got it down to a 4.9.
Look at you.
So they gave me a skinny kid jersey, man. I got a number 80.
Whoa.
Number 80.
Number 80.
Yes.
Okay, so you throw on that number 80 for the first time. How'd that feel?
And it was cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, I got to spend the first 2 periods of every practice with the skinny kids running routes,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was fun.
Sure.
And then go back the rest of the time as a fat guy, you know what I mean?
The skinny kid warm up, or the skill guy warm up, and the big boy warm up, a little different. Big boy warm up's a little more intense, and I was glad I was a skinny kid and just able to toss the rock around and do that kind of stuff. The big boys, they did not look like they were having fun during their warm ups.
Well, it was the practice was laid out on periods, just like it is in college and just about everywhere. And, the Monday, Tuesday practices were all 30 period. They're all 5-minute periods, so you're about to go practice for 2.5 hours in 100-degree heat.
Did they have it laid out? We used to my quarterback coach used to have the schedule ahead of time, and I used to ask him. We always used to ask him how many periods we got, because then we would know this is going to be a serious practice, or we can coast a little bit, we'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so but in the first, this was my favorite drill in all of football as an offensive lineman, and even when I was playing defense, is middle four. Middle four is one of my favorites. It's two D linemen and 2 linebackers, and then 5 offensive linemen, man, and you just go crush each other. Every play, and everybody knows the play that's coming. There's no back. There's nobody running the football. We're just doing schemes, and just going one-on-one with people. High school was the first time that we'd gone into more of a read type blocking system. Normally it was just, this week there's going to be a guy lined up over you because they're running a 50 series defense, and then so they got a nose tackle and a 5 tech, or next week there's no 5 tech, whatever.
Yeah.
So you finally got defenses. They're running multiple defenses, so you have to get up there and make a call and do some things, and offensive linemen are talking to each other. But by the second quarter, everybody knows the play is coming because the offensive lineman's saying the same thing, and it doesn't matter, But we get out there and we would do that for like 3 periods, and that was the first one. That's when I would join them. I'd come back from skinny kid running routes and barely breaking a sweat at this point, you know what I mean? Because I'm only running like 5-yard outs. And
were your fellow fat boys mad at you? That of course they were.
Yeah. They didn't like it, but it was funny, and I did my best to make sure I rubbed it in, and I didn't have I didn't have to warm up with the fat kids, And so Coach Robbins was our offensive line coach, the head coach and the offensive line coach. And so, he was our guy, and you'd get beat, you'd beat him. You'd get beat in middle four. That's what it was all about, And that's the beauty of the euphemism of football for life is, you're going to get beat sometimes, you know what I mean? Sometimes a guy smaller than you is going to beat you. Sometimes you're going to beat the guy that's bigger than you. That's just the way it goes. And you have to learn how to kind of fight through that adversity and change things and figure out what it is that you can do to make it different. And so we would go against each other like that. And we had 2 practices every day. Had to be on the field at 6 a.m. Offense was in shorts and shoulder pads in the morning. Defense always full pads because they did tackle, recoil, and all that stuff in the morning. So that was a big disparity too.
They don't do that anymore. Two practices. That's
6 a.m. including school. First period was football. So you would go from 6 and you'd be in your first class with second period. You'd be sweating, trying to get the sweat off you. I mean, you go shower and stuff, but it's
still there. No, you
no
see,
air
it's not. So 6 a.m. practice, boys, means what time are you getting up?
I'd get up at 5 because I had to go pick up a couple guys, take them to practice. Robert Dancliffe's puppy dog. Pup played at A&M. Great offensive tackle. Big, huge guy. And Wayne McGarity. I don't know Wayne.
Did he go?
Wayne went to Clark.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was a sophomore running back for us when I was a senior. But they lived over here, actually by you, so I had to get up at like 5, jam a couple tacos in my grill, and then get over there. So you had to, the night before, you had to get your school clothes together.
Of course,
Just grab them on a hanger and go.
Yep.
Go pick them up. They paid me $5 a week to give them a ride to school and a ride home.
Sure.
And
but that's how I know somebody loves football, because I don't like anything at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm not a pleasant person to be around at 5 a.m. But if it means enough to you, and you're not just taking care of yourself, you're taking care of your teammates too. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and it was something that I didn't even think twice about. And it was kind of an honor.
Love it.
Have somebody come to you and say, "Hey, man, I need a ride to practice, or I can't make it." I'm like, "You're not making it's not going to be an option."
Well, that means that they trust you. You're a dependable guy. They look at you as almost a leader.
Anyway, so quite a commitment to play football at Clark. We were carrying a tradition, a number of district championships straight, a bunch of different commitments. Every team I've ever played in has key victories that have to happen. No matter what the outcome of the season is, these have to happen. When I was at the Longhorns, we had to beat the Wildcats and the Oilers. And when I was in Hobby, we had to beat Stevenson and Sol Ross. Those were the teams that we had to beat. And when we were at Clark, you got to beat Churchill. You have to beat them. It's the Gucci Bowl. So
explain to me the Gucci Bowl, where all that comes from.
So I think it was like 6th grade when it was Churchill that brought it out. It was traditionally the first game of the season, and they've been going on since Clark was open. Still the first. It's usually the Thursday night game.
True.
To kick off San Antonio football. And one year, I think I was in 6th grade, the run-throughs were all paper back then, so they were different drawings every year.
Some schools still do that.
Yeah, there's a neat tradition.
Yeah, I like it.
One of the things that like the Pep Squad and everybody did was make those. And they put their banner up, and it was Gucci Bowl 1 was what they called this.
Really? Now, were Churchill guys at that time, were Churchill and Clark guys like, I imagine Noah rocking Gucci shoes and Gucci shirts and all that kind of stuff? Do you look like the Biggie, Notorious B.I.G.? What's that all about?
I was not that guy.
No, okay.
I was a boots and jeans kind of guy.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay.
My parents were not didn't allow us to wear labeled clothes.
Sure.
They wouldn't
love
buy
it.
They would. I mean, we could buy it if we wanted to, but they wouldn't buy it for us.
My dad was exactly the same way.
The fanciest I got was when I got to wear 501 jeans.
Oh.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I got a pair of Red Wings that I wore.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the style.
Sure.
And,
it still is over there. That's still what they wear.
I actually just wear a little bit nicer jeans and a little bit nicer boots now. That's about the same for me.
Yeah.
We're 2 affluent schools, most affluent schools in San Antonio, and outside of Alamo Heights, but they didn't really count because they were only 4A back then, and 3A or something. I don't know. We didn't really care about the 09ers. Neither one of us had to play them, so we considered ourselves the 2 top teams in San Antonio as far as that was concerned.
And Churchill was a top team at that time.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, they would win their district and we would win ours, but all of us had to play Judson at some point. Which that was the other game that you had to win, and we didn't very often.
Now, was Churchill, Lee? Who was all in that?
Churchill, Lee,
Roosevelt,
Mack, and
gotta be one more in there. I'm trying to think of the older
it was
school.
Judson was out of Northeast.
Judson.
Back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, we would all play each other in the preseason. We had 5 preseason games and then 5 district games, and or 6 or 4, whatever. And then you'd go on to the playoffs. So it was a 10-game series or 10-game deal. We typically played Judson twice a year. But to go on about the Gucci Bowl, so this was Gucci Bowl.
1.
No.
Oh.
That was when I was 6th grade when that happened.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is Gucci Bowl like 5 and 6 or something like that when I played in my junior and senior year.
And that's when you were on varsity your junior year.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Junior year, I played JV. As an interior lineman, which even as a tight end in the wing T, you're an interior lineman. Very, very few of us go to varsity as a sophomore. And even if you do go as a sophomore, you end up playing the JV game anyways. Because there's only one way to get better at offensive line or defensive line, and that's to play, regardless of the level that you're playing at. And that's a little bit of advice that I give people. Everybody has aspirations to play D1 football. I want to play D1 football.
I don't even know what it means.
But if you have something that you want to do long term, you say you want to go to the NFL and you're an offensive lineman or something like that, and you feel like you can really do that, repetition is where it's at.
I agree.
So you go to, Abilene Christian and start 48 games. That's where you get your experience,
If you're good and you get the reps, you will be found.
Yeah, the exception to the rule is the 1 or 2 offensive linemen a year that start as freshmen, as true freshmen. That doesn't happen very often.
Well, sure, and most of those guys are probably like 6'5", and they're already built like seniors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they might be a year older. That's what I did with my son. He's a summer birthday too. So instead of starting him on time, I kept him out until
Look at you.
I redshirted my kid.
Look at you.
But I did it for a lot of reasons.
No,
football,
I understand. Yeah. Sure.
but-
Wink, wink, wink.
Yeah. So, anyways, playing in the Gucci Bowl. I remember,
real quick, so the Gucci Bowl is going to be your first game as a junior. You're on varsity.
Yeah,
This is the place you've starting. You're what position? Tight end. Tight end. This is the place you've wanted to play since you were a little kid. What's that feeling like of you're strapping it on for your first game on varsity? I just got goosebumps. Look at this.
Yeah.
I got goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah, it's awesome.
I get the same thing.
Yeah.
Neck
Oh,
hairs are
love
up
it,
right
man.
now.
Yeah, me too.
We had gotten moved up for the playoffs the year before, so we'd had the opportunity to be on the sidelines, but we knew we weren't going to play.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And we didn't even have stripes on our helmet. You could tell who we were. We were basically cheerleaders.
Sure.
And but I was honored to be there regardless. This was the year I had my varsity locker. I had stripes on my helmet. I was starting. We were running 2 tight ends, so I was starting essentially left tight end, and I remember it was so crowded at the game that there was standing room only, and so the cops actually had to make a hole for us to get onto the field for warm up.
Where were y'all playing this at?
We were at Northside for junior year, Northeast for the senior one. So we had we'll get out on the field, and I remembered almost hyperventilating. The bands are playing, the bass is thumping on that thing, and that still gets me fired up.
Yeah, I love the snare.
You see just people.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make a face out. I could see my dad. I could always see my dad. I could always hear my dad. Over 15,000
Really?
people, I could hear my dad yelling at me. But we get on the field, we do our warm-ups, and I'm hyperventilating to the point where I think that my shoulder pads are too tight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I'm pouring sweat.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 90% humidity and
August
I'm
in
just
Texas.
Like, oh
and,
man, this is a Gucci Bowl.
Sure.
It's something that you've wanted to play in since
You've
you were in the
watched,
5th grade, man. And here we are. And I remember we went back into the locker room after warm up, and we were supposed to get with our position. So I'm going with offensive line, and I had to make a little stop and throw up in the bathroom.
Like many do.
Nope. And it was all water because I was drinking too much water.
Sure.
And so then I got sick and I threw up. I felt a little bit better after
You
that.
do? Yep.
But I was also, one of the beneficial things, as a junior, I was also on special teams. So we were going to receive. So I was, we're out there first play. And I always had this thing, I was nervous for every first game of the year, that first hit. It's been 8 months since you felt it. Is it going to feel worse or better this year? That kind of thing. And kickoff is a great time to lay the wood on somebody, or get the wood laid to you. And I remember that very opening play. I got a turnover block on the return, just nailed this kid. And I was like, oh, it's on now. I feel good. You know what I mean? And now nothing hurts. Everything is wired. You're zoned in. You can't hear anything anymore. There's no crowd. Just you. Josh LaRocca was our quarterback at the time. A great guy. Ended up playing at Rice and played with the Cowboys for a little bit.
Nice.
Great guy. And fun to play with. He had a great arm. He was a field general, and he got in there, was calling the play, and here it goes, and and we just got out there and made it happen. And I think we won. That game was pretty tight. I think it was like 27-21 or something, but we won.
Nice.
And that was the first of the game. It was going to be good, and we had a really tough schedule that year. It was, we had Churchill, then MacArthur. We won on a fumble recovery on our goal line to stop them from the go-ahead touchdown.
Jeez.
And then it was Roosevelt, which we beat pretty handily. Then we went out to San Angelo to play San Angelo Central, and they had a guy named Shea Morenz quarterbacking for them, who was a beast. Yeah. And they had a guy named Chris Uso who was over top of me playing defensive end, and he went on to play at Clemson. And
that little school,
that little tiny
that little
school
ACC school. It's number 3 in the country right now.
Yeah, and they were good back then. And we tied that game by they dropped at least 4 touchdown passes, and the only reason, if you ever been to San Angelo, Texas, it never rains out there. We had so much rain that night that my high top cleats were in water.
Oh gosh!
And that's the only reason we tied that game. I'm convinced to this day. We had Coach Robbins had this thing called the Cougar Man. And it was when you couldn't explain how something happened and it went in our favor, it was because the Cougar Man helped us out.
I like it.
Yeah. So then we went on to we played Judson the next week. It's funny how you remember this stuff. I mean, this is like 23 years ago, and I remember like it was yesterday.
It means a lot to you. So
Yeah.
And it meant a lot to you. It impacted your life in a big way. That's why.
We lost a tough game to them in that final non-district game. And that was disappointing.
But you're 4-1. You've had a great preseason. I mean, that's awesome.
4-1, I think.
4-1.
Yeah. And we're still, I think number 2 in the city behind Judson.
Sure.
And going to our district, we didn't lose a district game.
How many schools coming out of your district for the playoffs?
2.
2. Okay, gotcha.
Top 2 teams. I think my senior year there were 3 because they went to a Super 5A.
Okay.
So,
They do 4 now. It's silly. That's way too many people.
yeah, it was 3 teams, and then whoever had the biggest population went to the Super 5A.
Okay.
Out of those 3, so it could be one year you could play in Super 5A, one year you're playing in 5A. And the whole thing was confusing to me. I didn't.
It's still confusing to me.
28 5A. I'm like, I don't know, And so we went through district and won all our district games and went out. We always played one of the teams from like the South Side. I think we played that year Highlands.
What was your number? Sorry, gosh. First varsity number.
Number 80.
Number 80. Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and so we went through, played, beat Highlands like 56-0 or 56-7, something like that. And then we were on tap again for another team for the bi-district, and then city championship was Judson. And we lost to them. Again, we played
a good program.
Played in Alamo Stadium.
Nice. Love that stadium.
Yeah, they had, they have a good program up there.
Yeah.
I think it was Coach Rutledge, DW Rutledge, ran a solid gig up there.
He did indeed. Yeah.
I played with a guy at Air Force that went to Judson.
Okay.
And he was a tight end also, and so he had bragging rights. They beat us. So at this point, we've lost 2 games in my varsity career, and both of them are to Judson, and that hurt.
Sure.
I mean, that hurt bad. I was like, man, we had such a good team, and a lot of guys were graduating that year. Me and George he was the starting center, and I was the left tight end, essentially the backside tight end. And
was your quarterback right-handed?
yes,
You're an important dude then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That backside, blind side.
Yeah, and so we had a lot of potential though. We knew we had some good guys coming up. That particular team had Justin Still, who went on to play at Baylor.
Yeah, a lot of talent, man.
On the defensive side of the ball, there were some really good players. Jonathan Hickerson, who played at UT. Moved to linebacker. Was a free safety then. Moved to linebacker in college. He's a big boy. Did real good up there too. Some other guys that were juniors that started on the D over there. So they were solid. We had a solid defense, and that was our MO. 400 yards of ground game and a defense that could shut it down. That was our thing, And so we as the seniors after that game, we made the obligatory jokes when the guys were cleaning their locker out. We call them has-beens, and they would call us never was and all that, never would be, the standard deal. And, it was a solemn moment for all of us because that was us next year. You know what I mean? We were going to be
very surreal.
It was going to be a little interesting.
Yeah.
And so we had a meeting, the seniors that were going to be seniors, we're juniors, and we were gonna work hard this off season and make this thing work, and we were gonna do whatever it was that we had to do to beat Churchill and beat Judson. Those were our big games. San Angelo was gonna come to us this year. They no longer had Shea Morenz.
That's good.
He graduated that year, which was nice. And anyway, so we had picked out what we were gonna do, and we were gonna do it right. And so we worked hard that off season. I'm back up a second here. I told you I got cut from the basketball team twice at Hobby. Freshman, sophomore, and junior year, I got cut from the baseball team in the final cut. Growing up playing baseball, I was an all-star every year and, did really well. And I expected to make the baseball team, and I just didn't. And there was a lot of reasons for it. Our coach, Coach Franzen, was a football coach. And, as an interior lineman, you're not getting better at football on the baseball field. So your time is better spent in the weight room doing what you're supposed to be doing and running track and all that stuff. Track was essentially mandatory for football players.
I love it.
I got out of track my junior year because I enrolled in flight school.
Really?
So I knew I wanted to go to the academy, so I wanted to learn how to fly. So I went to my dad went and talked to the coach, said, hey, can you get out of track to do this? He's still going to do all his workouts and everything, but we really want him to take flight school. So I went to Palo Alto College, community college, and took a course and then started flying.
Where were you flying out of?
San Antonio International.
Okay, cool.
Wright Flyers. I was 16 years old flying airplanes.
That's a big deal.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to pick up chicks.
Yeah, it was actually. So I, learned how to do all that stuff. Got cut again from the baseball team. That's what made my dad decide, just go get into flight school. I couldn't figure out why I was getting cut, man. I was a good baseball player. Why am I keep getting cut? So we go into the senior year. I work hard in the off season, and Pat and I would work hard together as a tight end. And the one thing that was nice about the wing tee is the dumps were all to the tight end. You know what I mean? So,
great pass! Love that pass.
Easy routes.
Yeah. Normally wide open.
Coming off the off the linebacker, 5 yards down, and nice and easy. And for somebody that doesn't have great speed, learning how to run routes properly and get yourself open is important in space. And so we went into the senior year pumped, and we were good. And we had run this play the year before, which was fun because as the backside tight end, it was a play called 45 crisscross. And as the backside tight end, there was some misdirection in the backfield, which made the linebacker take a step to their left, while you were going to come just crush this guy. And so that's where I got my Cougar heads all the time was I turned over guys left and right on that play.
Were you all watching film at the Saturday? Yeah. Saturday morning film? Good. Okay, cool.
Saturday morning was the previous game film, and then Monday.
How good does it feel to have one of those and see it on film in front of your boys and you saw that, huh?
You got a clicker in your head too. Yeah. It's funny,
it's coming. It's coming. The play's coming.
I was like, dude, it's right around 11 minutes in the second quarter. I knocked the crap out of this guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's coming, and you just feel it. But we ran this play. It was great. It was a great play. But now I was going to be on the front side, which means I was going to pull as a tight end on a misdirection play. So we get out there, opening game, and no more jitters like the time before, man.
Sure.
This is my place. You know what I mean? We were here. We were in command.
Your
we were
team.
Ready to rock and roll. Here's the Gucci Bowl, our senior year, ready to rock. Standing room only, Friday or Thursday night lights, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And we're on TV. We're on the radio.
Nice. I love it that San Antonio, they still do that, the Thursday night lights, and they do. That's such a big deal. Wish we would have had something like that. I love it.
It's fantastic. You know, it's a for the majority of the people that aren't going to go on and play college football, that's the highlight, man. You know what I mean? It's great. And so we get out there, and the coach calls 45. We told him, we decided like Wednesday, we're going to run 45 crisscross to start it off. So we get the ball in like the 22-yard line. Todd Stanley's the wingback, and he's the one that's going to get the ball. Todd Stanley went on with the Reds. He was a great baseball player. Hit 500 our senior year. He's badass.
Why'd they let him play baseball and not you?
Because he was a skinny guy.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Didn't need to be in the weight room like we did. But he was a lot better, too.
And he played for the Reds. I'm going to assume he was pretty darn good.
He was really good. So anyways, we run this pull, and I get probably one of the finest block hits I've ever put on somebody. This poor kid had no idea what was coming. And I plowed him, and 78 yards later, he was in the end zone. It's my highlight reel, man, this play.
Yeah.
So we're in the end zone, Gucci Bowl, first play of the game, bam, in the end zone.
Everyone's just going nuts in the stands.
And I'll be the first one to tell you this. I had no idea Todd Stanley was that fast.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, I knew he was a good athlete, but we've been playing football and baseball together since we were kids. And I watched him take off. I mean, I was on the ground on top of this guy, and I put my hands up on him like this.
Sure.
And I was watching him score, man. I just, I met him on the side. It was a long way to run for a fat kid. You know
sure.
what I mean? And
got to conserve that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was hot out. So, it was great. We go do our, your meeting. And the coach was like, I don't have a lot to talk about because we only ran one play. You know what I mean?
Executed well.
But we're going to run 44 crisscross on the next play. So we're like, all right. So we get the ball on like the 24-yard line this time. And run 44 crisscross. So I'm on the other side now pulling the other way. This poor kid on this side has no idea what's about to come to him. So he is keying. So the guy makes the step out, and the wing tee thing comes in behind him. He takes a step this way, and I just plowed right through this. I mean, one of the great hits when you're on top of him, and he's looking at your belly button. You know what I mean? And Todd Stanley goes 76 yards to the house. Man.
Oh my
2 plays, 2 touchdowns, 14-0.
You'd feel like his boy would have told him, "Watch out for this play here."
Well, and what's fun is the other tight end. It was Jay Castleberry. He's a paramedic in Austin, actually, or a medic in Austin. Jay was the other tight end, and so he was turning the linebacker over, and so we were just doing this tight end thing, you know what I mean, and just killing people. So now we're 14-0. We go on to just destroy Churchill that year. We were done at halftime. The second guys were in. As a senior, that's the best thing in the world. When you go to that as a junior, when you're the starting left tight end, weak side tight end, and they go to the second team, well, now you're just the right tight end. You don't really get to rest. You know what I mean? So as a senior, it's quite a drill. We were never allowed to take our helmets off on the sidelines, with the exception of getting a drink of water. Coach Robbins was very, very strict about no earrings, short hair, had to shave, wear a collared shirt. I mean, he was very into the what I term is the citizen athlete. And
you know what I like about that, though? If you have your helmet on all the time, you never have to look for it.
Right. You're
always prepared. There's no, coach, give me 5 seconds, go find it, run it. Nope, I'm ready to roll. Let's do it. I like that.
And you're always ready to be in the game, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I remember in the next game against Mac, the same thing happened. We scored on the opening play the first 3 games of the season, running the exact same play. I mean, they knew. I mean, we'd get up there and make the same calls, and there was some things on the line that we would call, and we scored on it. I think Todd Stanley was the leading rusher in the state through the first 3 games, because he'd had I think he had 7 rushes for 400 yards or something. I mean,
That's
it was
insane.
crazy, something silly. And
but his dad was happy.
well, it was fun. Yeah, his dad, Paul Stanley, was a coach of ours forever. He's passed on, but Paul Stanley was awesome, dude. Ironically, his favorite band was Kiss.
Yeah.
But
if you don't understand that reference, go look up Kiss.
Google up Kiss. Yeah. Anyways, they finally stopped it in the second play of the third game. but they stopped him like 55 yards downfield. You know what I mean? So it's still an awesome play. And we were surprised. We're like, what do we do now? What play are we going to run now?
Was that 44, or we're going to go run 45 crisscross now?
We're like just looking at the coach going, just run it again, coach. They can't stop it, you know. So through the first 5 games or first 4 games of the season, we're the leading rushing team in the country or in the state.
Wow.
And we were averaging a little over 400 yards a game on the ground.
It's insane.
Maybe 80 yards in the air. You know what I mean?
Sure.
There was no reason to throw.
Yeah.
You know, I had a couple catches here and there, a couple first downs. You know, like I said, I never knew what to do after I caught the football. You know what I mean? You turn around and look, and you're like, what do I guess I'll run that way.
Normally, big guys, when they have the opportunity, they just look for someone to run over. I've noticed that.
Yeah, and so anyways, I probably missed an opportunity or two to be a superstar, but this has never been my nature. And so anyways, we went through that season leading up to the Judson game. You know, both of us were undefeated going in the game. They got a guy named Gerard Douglas running the ball, who was a stud at Baylor. And they had a bunch of guys that were studs. And we had this guy named Larry Holmes. Okay.
Larry Holmes, that sounds very
He was a boxer back in the day, but this guy's name was Larry
Oh,
Holmes.
no, I know that. No,
Yeah.
I know Larry Holmes, the boxer. I thought you were going to say, yeah, Larry Holmes, the boxer. No.
No,
Okay.
Larry Holmes, I think he's around here in San Antonio. I think I connected with him on Facebook, and I have another funny story about college and Larry Holmes. But Larry Holmes was one of these guys that was a good athlete, and but there was no. He kind of came into the system late. There was just really no place to put him, you know, and so they put him at fullback. Fullback in the wing tees like another offensive lineman, and they had this all-state linebacker. I can't remember what his name is, but he was killing people all year. And that dude had like 3 tackles for, no losses and in this Judson game because Larry was destroying him. I mean, this in the film on
KOing
Monday,
him.
Oh,
Larry
the film
Holmes
on
was
Monday was
KOing
just
him.
amazing. Like you see the linebacker, squeezing down on the center because the ball's coming up, and then you just see him getting his head just whiplashing back, and Larry Holmes leading with the fullback and just crushing him. And it was he made himself that game. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It was amazing. And I think it was an injury that got him the opportunity to play there. So when you're a second teamer, it's probably one of the toughest things to do is to stay engaged in the football game to a point where you can jump in and be ready to rock and roll at a moment's notice.
It's tough, yeah.
ACL snap every day, broken bones, whatever. You
Everything,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And he jumped in there and made it happen.
Good for him.
And so it was we beat him, and it was fun because it wasn't fun. Our quarterback broke his ankle. Pat Burke, best quarterback ever. I have to say second best because I played with Bo Morgan. Man, that guy was amazing.
Yeah, Bo Morgan's okay.
Yeah.
Bo Morgan, we're going to talk about him a little bit. Air Force Academy.
Yeah, so we had Pat broke a pretty bad break in that game. And so it was 14-14. It was just a grind-out defensive battle, man. It was crazy. And we got the ball. Defense made a huge stop. We got the ball. And I think we had like 1:27 to go. And I caught a pass that it was a 4th down play. And I caught a pass for a 1st down. We get hustle up and line up, and he's calling an audible. It's our backup quarterback named Rad Weaver, who's another stud that went to Texas and pitched for them.
Jeez.
And
You guys are loaded.
yeah, and so he calls this play, and it's one of these it's a pass play, and we don't know if it's going to work because we haven't had to use much passing. And so we got a 1st down, come in, blocking it. This was a pass play that I stayed in on. Max protect, and the one thing that Rad was slow. He had feet like hands, and
But he had a cannon.
boy, he could throw the ball.
Yeah.
Man. And he's the son of a high school coach and all that stuff, and his father had passed away, and he moved to Clark, and he was a sophomore, so he was automatically in the starting role of
Wow.
a state. I think we were number 6 in the state at the time.
It's a big deal.
And he goes in there and just throws a beautiful pass to Todd Stanley. 2 steps back of the end zone, touchdown. We won the game. And we hadn't beaten Judson in like 5 years. 2 meetings a year we hadn't beat them. We lost 10 straight to them, and we beat them in their house. And so it was just amazing, you know, and big game, huge deal. I woke up the next morning, you know, excited. I took a step out of my bed and fell down. I had fractured my leg.
Oh, no.
In the game, and I was real sore, real tender.
Did you not know this ahead of time?
No, I didn't know it. I went to bed that night.
Just adrenaline, you're rolling. Yeah, no, I understand. You don't feel all that stuff until the next day.
It's really difficult to determine unless you have a major injury like an ACL or a broken bone, like a true broken. This was just essentially a stress fracture.
I don't understand,
you know? And you just play. You play through things, you know, and I think it's the movie The Program where they talk about the difference between being hurt and injured.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really hard to tell sometimes. And so I went to the doctor that day, and sure enough, it puts me on crutches, and I'm going to miss the district opener, which I was a little upset about.
Senior year, I'm sure.
But there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? And being a good teammate sometimes means that you got to do what's best for the team, and that's that wasn't me playing in that game. You know what I mean? And so I sat out that game. My backup did a fantastic job. I think he made 2 catches that game, and we won. So we're 6-0 now.
You told me they take you out of the game and they start throwing the ball to tight end?
Well, because we have Rad at quarterback now.
Okay,
we don't have a ground munching quarterback anymore.
Sure.
You know, he can't run the option. That was like having Rad run the option would be like Troy Aikman at OU.
At OU, yeah.
And that's how good Barry Switzer is as a salesman. I don't know how that happened.
I don't either.
Anyways,
probably
so
cars
we were
and girls.
A lot more. Yeah, exactly. And so we did good. We won that game pretty handily. And I went and had I was trying everything. I was going through, doing hot and cold therapy, everything I could to get the pain down at least. I was figured, the doctor said you can't really do anything worse to it as long as you can play on it. If you can run on it, that's fine. But I couldn't even put weight on like I couldn't pick up my left leg. My right leg wouldn't do it. And so I was real down, man. I'm like, man, this is my scholarship year,
Sure.
And I'm trying to get into Air Force, and I have some great film, but it's only 5 games worth, you know. And so my dad was like, I got an idea. So
Can't wait to hear this.
I'm on crutches. And I'm down in the dumps too, man. I am down, and I can't practice.
Sure.
I can't, do anything. And more than the personal grief of it was the just a feeling of, man, I can't. My team needs me, and I can't be there for
Feel
them.
helpless.
That's a terrible feeling,
Yep.
And so we went to this guy named Dr. Chang. He was an acupuncturist.
Okay.
And I thought, man, Dad, you got this is some witchcraft. And
Sure.
I think it is a little bit of witchcraft,
There's some mental.
But, so he laid me out, and he made me drink this herbal tea, and there was incense going. And he didn't hardly speak English. He had to write down on what he was trying to tell you. He could write in English.
Yeah.
His accent was so bad you couldn't understand. So he would write down, where's the pain? I'd show him. So he starts sticking these needles in all over my leg, and then in my hands and in my neck, and doing all this different stuff. And I'm like, some of it hurt.
Sure.
He'd dig them in the places that I had tenderness. Then he was burning incense in the ends of some of them, doing some different things. And it took about 2 hours.
Oh, that's a long session.
Yeah, and then,
wow.
then they
I've
pull
had
all those
acupuncture,
out,
but,
and they flip you over and do your back. And I was like, dude, I don't hurt there. And he's like, oh, you shut up.
Yeah.
So I did it, and by gosh, I walked out of there with no crutches.
Really?
I could jump on my leg. I could pull my other leg up and hop on it.
What's his name again?
It was Dr. Chang. He was over. I don't think he's there anymore because I remember the building.
Yeah. Dr. Chang, I want to come visit you. I've got some issues.
Yeah, he was. It was kind of funny. He was over off like Nakoma, like in those back warehouse areas.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he was shady, man.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? And I don't know how my dad found the guy. And so I went immediately to the orthopedic doctor. This is Ty Golitz. Ironically, my orthopedic guy now is his son-in-law, Jeff Milliken, and he takes care of my whole family. Actually, just replaced my stepmom's knee and everything. And great guy. But I went to Ty, and I didn't have an appointment. Essentially, just walked in, and it said, I can hop on my leg. I don't have crutches. He's like, where are your crutches? I'm like, I didn't even bring them in here. I'm not wearing crutches anymore. And he said, well, I mean, if you can do this, you're good, you know. So I just taped it up, and they put a little brace on it just so it wouldn't move around too much. And I was back. I missed one game.
Dr. Chang, if you're listening to this podcast, call me 985-859-4563. We need to talk. This might be the coolest part of the conversation, because I'm just baffled at how a fractured bone, what you did to my boy here to get him right for his senior year.
Having a little bit better understanding of medicine now, the fracture wasn't what was causing the pain. There was just a lot of essentially acute tendonitis from the trauma of the area. And I had a bruise there too, you know what I mean? So there was some sort of impact of some kind. And so, but that's what was hurting so bad. So they just taped it up, and I was able to practice and play. And so I got back in there, and that's the other thing that's tough as a backup. You go in there and you do a good job as a backup, and the next week the guy's back in and you're out. You know what I mean? Regardless of how good a job you did.
Oh yeah.
And but he was a good teammate. He got it, and so he moved back to the backside, and we were playing. We did well through district. It was tough. District was tough that year, man. Holmes was tough. Jay was tough. And we weren't, we were missing our starting quarterback, who was like the heart of our team, and he was down in the dumps. He had to have surgery and pins and all kinds of stuff. So we battled through district, and then we decided to do something really stupid. We always had team dinner, and
what day?
The night before the
night
game.
Before. Where normally
Random
do it?
places, man.
Okay.
It was Alamo Cafe or Chester's Hamburgers, whatever. We
Seniors are deciding where we're doing the coaches,
we
or
would take the whole restaurant over, man. Your seniors decide.
Seniors decide. Okay.
Yeah. And we rotate captains every. This is different seniors every game for captains, and the captains will decide where we're going to have team dinner that week. And so we go have team dinner, and then we get this bright idea to go play paintball the night before a football game. Nobody'd ever played paintball before. We didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? But like, hey, let's go do a team building exercise and go play paintball. Well, we went out there and played like 5 games of paintball, running around like,
or get worn out,
dummies.
Yeah.
And
get hurt.
We go play Marshall finals. I think it was a final. No, it was this 3rd district game of the year, 4th district game of the year, something like that. And it's a loss, so it's not big in my memory. And we got beat 22-0. Just destroyed in that game. Marshall went on to play Permian in the state championship and lost, but they were a hell of a team.
Yeah.
And I still run into some of those guys from time to time. I'm friends with them.
I didn't realize Priest Holmes went to Marshall.
He was Anthony back then.
Anthony, that's right. That's right.
So I grew up knowing him as Anthony.
That's so funny, because one of my dad's of one of my quarterbacks, he went to Holmes too, and that he always refers to him as Anthony as well. That's funny.
Yeah, when he went to Texas, he changed it to his. I think it was Anthony Priest Holmes was his name.
Okay.
And so he just went by his middle name.
Gotcha.
Which was,
whatever.
to be honest with you, it's cooler than Anthony.
Oh, it's cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course, he went on to do a couple of good things in the NFL.
He did okay. His son just finished his career up at O'Connor. Was an excellent receiver out there.
Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Anthony, really good guy too, man. Really solid guy. Even though you play each other, you got a pretty healthy rivalry.
You respect.
You have a lot of respect for each other.
Sure.
And we were friends. Of course, Wayne and he were friends as well. So that's kind of how I knew Anthony, was through him. Because Marshall, so Wayne lived over here. Well, you don't have to go far to get to Marshall. You know what I mean? It's right there. So they knew each other from playing ball back in the days and stuff. And so we went into we still won district because Marshall lost 2 games. We got bailed out by somebody that shouldn't have beaten them, and they beat them, and we celebrated. It was the worst celebration I've ever been a part of in my life. To lose a game, and then we won our final game of the district. It was an easy game. But we weren't sure if we played on Friday, and I think they played on Saturday, and we all were waiting to hear the score. I think some of us went to the game, and they won. They got beat, and so we were the district champions. And although you're a district champion, backing into the district championship is not the way you want to win a district championship.
I know, but it just
But
you take what you can get.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and we were proud to be it. It was
Sure.
fun for us because we could say
You're a two-time
that
district champ as
two-time
a
district
starter.
champs,
Huh?
and we beat we were district champs over the team that was the state runner-up. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty big. And I rooted for Marshall that
Sure.
game. I
Oh, of
wanted
course,
them
you
to
got
beat
to.
Permian so bad.
Sure.
I wanted them to beat them. I called some of the guys. I was like, you guys got to whoop their butt, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a good game. I don't know how Permian wins. They have no size. They have great team speed, but I don't know how they win games, man. I just really don't get it. The book was much better than the movie. The book was fantastic.
No, I've read the book.
Yeah, I read the book when it came out. I mean, it was.
I used to work
awesome.
with a guy who was on the state championship team. Still wears a state championship ring every day.
Yeah, it's big out there, man.
But I think that's what it is. Is that that's all that's out there.
Yeah, it's the mojo, man.
There's no university out there. No big time university out there. Football is king out in that area. At that point, there weren't all the different branch off schools. If you wanted to play football, that's where you went. So if you're pulling from all of West Texas, of all the best football players in West Texas, they might not be the best football players compared to Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, whatever. But if you're getting the best of the West, and that's all you care about, that's all you care. You don't care about baseball. You just care about football, and that's all the town. I mean, have you seen that stadium out there?
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
It's insane. That's why they used to win like that.
Well, and you got dads that are wearing their championship ring.
Yeah.
And you've been staring at that since you were a kid.
Yep,
I mean,
that's all you
there's
want.
a lot of tradition out
Sure,
there. And
definitely.
there's, it's a very blue collar area. The rough, it's
Oil
a rough
field,
mix.
yep.
Yeah, the oil field guys, as they refer to themselves as oil field trash. I would never call them that, but I'm very familiar with those people out there. I spent a lot of time in West Texas nowadays. Anyway, so we district champs, and we go on and win our first playoff game, and I think we win the second playoff game, and then we move facing Judson again in the city championship, and they just destroyed us.
It's a good program.
We didn't have our quarterback anymore. We lost Jonathan Hickerson to an ACL. Two of our offensive linemen were sick with the flu to the point where they had to run in the third quarter to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, it was just. And I'm not making it. They beat us square. They popped us in the mouth. We were not playing 100%. We weren't. In my mind, mentally, we had played a great season.
Sure.
That's kind of where we were at.
Yeah, no, I got you.
And we sit there every now and again and talk about, man, it would have been cool if we'd have been healthy going to that game. But that's kind of like, you can what if all day long.
Sure.
That just wasn't the cards you were dealt.
Man, end of the year too. Third round of the playoffs? How many guys are healthy? It's. That's why some teams can go on that run because they were just lucky enough to not have any major contributors get hurt. And then you see a good team like you guys that have you can't have so many key guys go down and expect to really make a push for it.
Yeah, it was the very first time I think we really played a game where there was some severe adversity. And as a 17-year-old kid. I don't know that I possessed the maturity to overcome that myself in my own head. You know what I mean?
Not a lot.
And so I had the feeling that there was some I just think that we thought we ran our course at that point. Everybody was limping around, everybody was sick. We lost our arguably two of our best players on the team, and so, we fought them good. It was 21-14 and a half.
Wow.
We'd had only 2 possessions at that time, and we scored on both. And they had 3
doesn't
possessions.
sound bad.
And they scored on all 3 of theirs.
Sure.
And we ran out of time in the half. But it was a ground game, both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the final score was like 42-21 or something. It was a pretty decisive victory. And it hurt, you know what I mean? Because it was like, man, it's the last time I'm going to put the black and silver on for, I'm not going to strap this helmet on again. I know I'm going to strap another helmet on, but it's not going to be this one. And so that was tough. I was in a bad mood for a while. I mean, just seriously, for the first time in my life, I didn't have anything to prepare for after a football season was over. You know what I mean?
Well, you almost I know exactly what you mean, but you almost identify to that role. I mean, you're so much more than that, but for the longest time, you've been wanting to be this Clark football player. You've been wanting, or varsity football player, and then you've been the man there for 2 years, and you really do kind of identify with that, and it is kind of a different experience of that chapter of my life's over. And that's tough because I've been wanting that chapter for such a long time, and I've been living it for such a long time. It's been so great. But you do realize that you do get to go on and do bigger and better things, and eventually. But yeah, it's like a loss. It really is like a loss.
Well, we were a team, man. We hugged each other. We congratulated them. We watched Judson go play in the state championship in the Super 5A category, and because Marshall went to the two of the teams the two teams we lost to that season
to state.
Both went to state championships.
Pretty awesome.
And I think Judson won it and Marshall lost it. So there's some, I'm not big on moral victories.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Not my favorite word.
No.
Moral victory.
You don't mean not every kid should get a trophy? You're not that type of guy?
No, I can't stand it, actually. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean.
I just it was a tough thing, and so a lot of us had to figure out, that's when you kind of start figuring out what your real true identity is at that point. You know what I mean? You wanted to be this guy. And I'm going to tell you, anybody that's listening out there that's, young, coming up, 5th, 6th grade, playing ball, and, you have this high school team that you're looking for, take time and look around when you're doing it, man. Enjoy it, because it is fun. Yeah. And I can tell you this, and I'm sure Yale will back me up on this. College football is fun, but high school football is real fun. College football becomes a job. You got a lot of school. You got a lot more commitment in the weight room, in the film room, and all that stuff. And there's a lot more distractions. You have a lot more freedom. It's just different. It's still fun, but high school football was a sport, man. It was great. You had 3,000 people at a pep rally, man. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen in college, man. Well, I mean, depends. You go to A&M, you get 50,000 people at your pep rally, but.
Well, I think that's a good point because I know when I was young, I was always I just wasn't content on where I was at. If I was playing Pee Wee, whatever, and I really can't wait to be in middle school and be that guy. When I got to okay, fine, but I can't really get to high school. But I can't wait to get to college. Instead of, dude, enjoy that 7th grade year. Man, look around, enjoy that 8th grade year, enjoy every year. Because don't always be in a rush to get that place. Enjoy the present.
We did some fun things, senior year during before the season started. As part of that institution I was talking to you about earlier, before the season started, after a Saturday practice, my dad was coaching Pee Wees with my brother, and a bunch of us had brothers on those teams. It was kind of fun. Like, a bunch of us seniors had brothers that were all playing together in 6th grade or in 7th grade, and. So we would go down, we'd take our short helmets and shoulder pads and go to their practice and teach them how to hit right.
Oh, that's awesome.
And go 80% against each other so they can feel the crunch and hear the crunch a little bit. And
it's a big deal.
Yeah, because, one of the things that you realize is every level that I went up in football, you're always a little bit intimidated going into it. And then you realize I do fit in here.
Yeah. That's with the job too. With anything.
I'm the same as this guy. You know what I mean? And it is. It's the same way with a job and the same way with school and all that stuff. So it was a lot of soul searching to do. And my dad gave me about a week of sulking, and then he was like, "All right, dude, it's done." You know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do now? And so I was like,
well, you knew you had a plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Well, I think what he was talking about was, are you going to try out for baseball again? And get cut for a 4th time? Okay. And so at that point, it was November, and baseball tryouts are in like February. So I decided to throw myself into baseball.
Okay.
I was at the cages every day after
All
practice.
right.
Cages.
I did not expect this. Okay.
I mean, that was my new obsession. That's what I was going to fit. I was going to feed the beast with baseball.
I got you.
Meantime, I was in the weight room every day too, working out hard. I was actually in really good shape.
But did you know you were going to go play football at Air Force at that point?
Not yet.
Okay, gotcha.
I was being recruited.
Mm-hmm.
Junior year and senior year, I'd gotten letters.
Tell me about that.
From different places. I got some looks from North Texas and Southwest Texas, which is Texas State now. Yep. They were, and North Texas was just about to go Division I. we had a couple guys from our team that were up there playing, and it was an up and coming program. They were terrible. The recruiting visit we went on up there was me and Brent Gothard, and Brent and I went up there after one of our games or on a bye week or something, and they got beat like 56-0. And Dave Parker was the coach, and he had a real southern twang, and he came out to talk to us, and he said, "Boys, when you want a sinking ship, it doesn't matter if the motor works or not. It's going to sink." And we laughed. And, North Texas was what they made that movie, Necessary Roughness. Yeah. And he was actually in that movie.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. So, yeah.
And they were actually Texas State in that movie.
They were Texas State. Yeah. The Armadillos. But anyways, they, so that was a viable thing. They were going to be Division I by the time we were sophomores. And so that was a viable option. Got looked at by Angelo State.
Well, and also just the opportunity to go play college football, man. No matter where. I mean, it's the opportunity. Somebody is saying, "We think you're good enough to come play and represent our program." That's an honor, man.
Well, and what was really cool about it was Coach Robbins was very well steeped in how to do this at this point, and he was good at figuring out what it is where you needed to be and being realistic with you about it. And so all the seniors have a meeting with the head coach afterwards and, talk about how the season went and where your future is. And he's going to give you his recommendation. And what he said to me was, "Noah, I'm not going to send tapes to Sul Ross or, some of these smaller schools because you don't belong there." And I was like, he goes, "Even if you don't play another down of football, you got the grades to go somewhere else and get yourself a good education. And I don't think that you'll be happy playing in that environment." That's where he had gone to school, so he used it as an example. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I got looks from Texas and A&M. I wasn't big, though. They in the early 90s, they were looking for a 6'5", 300-pound guy. They didn't care what they ran or benched, or how strong or how agile they were. They could turn that kid into something, and that was true.
Sure.
So when I go on a visit, and I went to Texas, and I disliked Texas for a long time after this, but they said, "We thought you were taller, and enjoy your weekend."
See you later.
That was the last I heard from Texas.
It's fun.
Yeah, which I got some looks from small things, but I didn't. This is something I did that was really stupid, and it made my parents very nervous. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. I didn't apply anywhere else. I didn't have a safety school. My mom asked me one day, "What are you going to do if you don't get in the Air Force Academy?" I'm like, "Apply again next year."
There you go.
And she was like, "Well, this is my stepmom." And she was the one that was very involved in my academics. And at this point, I was top 10% in my class and had good SAT scores and all that good stuff. And finally, I started getting – Air Force doesn't recruit juniors. They don't even look at them. You know what I mean? They very intentionally don't sign a lot of people on signing day because they're looking for a certain type of person. They're not looking for necessarily for a stud football player. They're looking for a stud football player that's undersized. They're looking for somebody that can, that has the ability to do more than just play football and go to school.
Well, you have to literally be undersized to fit in the jets and stuff anyway, right?
Yeah, but to do the everyday thing, to put on a uniform every day, to get up and study,
it's not your typical college life.
It's not, and that's a whole nother conversation, you know what I mean? But that's where I'd wanted to go my entire life. And that's what I was going to do that. I was going to make that happen somehow or another. And I've been talking to recruiters because they start with the general recruiting process. The coaches don't come talk to you. They want you to apply to the Air Force Academy first. I wrote my very first letter to the Air Force Academy when I was in 6th grade, and I did it independent of anybody knowing about it. And I mailed it off, and my dad got a phone call on like a Thursday afternoon one day, and they said, "Mr. Oviedo, it's nice to see you. This is so-and-so, Captain so-and-so from the Air Force Academy. We received a letter of interest from your son, and we were wondering if we could get his SAT scores and a copy of his transcripts from his high school." And my dad was like, "I got what?" Like, my sister was in high school at the time. And he was like, that doesn't make any sense, because she had no aspirations of anything like that. And he was like, who are you looking for? And they're like, Noah, Oviedo. And he said, Noah's in the 6th grade. And they were like, oh, well, we're going to put a file together for him, and we'll put it in the he's in 6th grade, section or whatever. But they sent me decals and like a program and all this stuff, to figure it out. And of course, I visited there a number of times, and I knew it was where I needed to be.
Place for you. Yep.
Yeah. And finally, Coach Noblet called me, and Coach Noblet was the offensive coordinator, and he was a recruiter for Texas. He lives in Dallas now. He's retired. And funny story about him, we always said that Coach Noblet had the heart of a child in a jar on his desk. Like he was a tough coach, man.
Oh, I've had something like that. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious.
He was awesome though. You know what I mean? He was just a great guy, and really wanted me. And there was about 4 of us. First of all, out of that team, the 1991 Clark Cougars, there was 11 Division I football players. That's unheard of.
Yeah, it's not like that now.
No.
I can't name too many. Maybe Steele, no, but not in D1. No, it's not like that now, man.
Well, I think the pot's diluted a little bit.
Sure,
with
of course.
all the schools and stuff, but
that's still amazing.
But yeah, we had some ballers, man.
Yeah.
And so myself and Alvarez was looking to go. He had something happen when we were kids that kind of disqualified him from going to the service academy. So he went on to,
That sounds like a good story.
Yeah. He went on to, the way he tells it is terrible. George,
okay.
You're never going to get a chance to be on here, George, because I don't want you to tell that story. Anyways, we, George, went on to live a real humdrum life, and, he's like the best cardiologist in San Antonio, probably Texas, at this point. That's painful for me to say, you know what I mean? Because, he's my oldest friend in the world, and he does such great work. And it was definitely his course in life, although tough. And we all hit those crossroads in life, and you may not understand why you're on this street now, but, in my personal opinion and experience, God's always had my back and put me where I belong, whether I knew it or not.
Agreed.
And so myself and Joel Johnson we got recruited very heavily by the Air Force Academy. Being young, JJ was almost a year older than me, but same class, Joel. And so they were like, hey, dude, let's just go to the prep school, man. And we were like, prep school? Never heard of it. We had one guy that went to the prep school from our previous, from the class of 91, Randy Tankersley. And so we met with Randy when he was home on a vacation or something, and we talked to him, and he was like, oh, it's cool, man. You're enlisted. You can play football. Doesn't count for any eligibility. You can go to a normal school after that and still have 5 years of eligibility. You play in a JUCO schedule. It's some loophole that they have. It's like basically being on a club team.
They still have it?
Yeah.
Prep,
oh,
okay,
yeah.
So
prep school was designed to take enlisted airmen and put them back through a high school type program so that they could get them ready to go to the academy. So enlisted guys have been out of high school for 3 or 4 years. They not used to doing algebra and stuff like that.
Sure.
They're gonna have to go do. So they put them back through essentially like a super senior year. But what it's turned into is a athlete placed a red shirt essentially.
Of course, yeah.
And
you're still playing other schools at this point?
JUCOs.
JUCOs,
You're
okay.
Big. Well, at the time it was Big 8 JUCOs.
And how long did you have to stay in a prep school, or was it different for every guy? 1 year. Okay, 1 year.
That's it. You get 1 year.
Was it at the academy? Okay.
It's on the academy grounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of different prep schools that are private. There's New Mexico Military Institute. There's Northwestern Prep. There's all these and different ones across that help people get into the academies.
But your place was just Air Force Academy.
Ours was at each of the service academies, Navy, Air Force, Army, all have a prep school.
Okay.
And you're technically enlisted, and you're essentially playing club football. I played baseball for them too. And you go through like a super senior year. It's like in 8-week terms, and you start with like addition and subtraction and math, and you end up at calculus. You know what I mean? You start off with life science and end up in chemistry. You know what I mean? Like you do all this kind of a refresher year. So it's fairly easy academic year for somebody that like JJ and I and most of the people that were there that were, had taken AP stuff in high school and whatnot. So it was fun. We got paid. To this day, probably the most money I've ever taken home in every month. We got paid like $700 a month. We had 3 squares a day. All our clothes. I mean, it was just fun.
You're living. You were living
big, and
no big responsibilities. Living.
Playing ball, getting used to that. But the downside to it was, people are like, "Oh, it's 5 years of college," and that back then people were still graduating in 4 years. That doesn't happen very often either now, too. But it kind of got you used to the military and used to kind of balancing your schedule a little bit more. And so I was excited to go. For me, it was great because I went to the prep school a week after my 18th birthday. I mean, I was young, with a July birthday. And when we showed up there, of course, everybody was September, October birthday. So they were all turning 19, you know what I mean? And I was just turning 18. That makes a big difference, And so my parents were getting nervous. My dad tells a story like it happened the night before I left for the academy, where I finally got my appointment and all this stuff. He's got this in his head where it was down to the wire like that. It was actually like March, April timeframe. I was still playing baseball when I got accepted, and so that was all good. I guess I leaked that story. That's a spoiler alert. And but we went through, and I got my appointment to the prep school. I think that year our class sent 6 kids to service academies. And we have a long tradition of service academy kids. So there was a guy or a girl in every class from Clark High School, in every class of the academy for like 15 straight years.
Wow, that's huge.
So you show up there and you know a couple people too, which is
that's good.
Helpful.
Yeah.
And anyway, so with that, that's when I decided, take a step back here. I think I did it in order to distract myself from the fact that I might not get an appointment to the academy or to the prep school, was baseball. And I was just rolling quarters every day at the batting cage, man, getting through it. And I was bound and determined I was like, there's no excuses now. Got to make this team. You know what I mean? I'm not playing football for Clark anymore. There's no reason for that. And I went out and I had just an amazing try. I mean, I've never played baseball that good in my life. You know what I mean? It was just fun. I was knocking the piss out of the ball, and the coach couldn't cut me. He just couldn't. I don't know if he wanted to or not. Willie, if you're listening to this, Willie Franzen, he just retired as a principal of middle school over. I can't remember what it's called, but
what's his last name?
Willie Franzen.
Franzen, okay. I had a quarterback, Walker Franz, but that was out. He's out in Seguin.
Anyways, Willie Franzen, is a good guy, man. He's a good baseball coach. And I finally went and talked to him. So the last baseball team I played for was a club team that was red. So I had red spikes. That's it. I wasn't going to go buy spikes. I didn't know if I was going to make the team. So here I am.
You stood out, baby.
Black and silver. And I got red spikes on.
That's like a Deion Sanders type move.
So we're getting down to this final cut, you know what I mean? And I've been just playing out of my gourd in scrimmages and different things. And I finally was like, talking to my dad about it. He goes, man, you just got to man up and go talk to coach, find out what's going on. So I was like, and I was intimidated by him a little bit because he cut me 3 years in a row.
Sure.
And so I said, Coach, can I have a word? You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, come on in, man. So I sit down. I said, Coach, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here or anything, but I've got to buy some black spikes if I'm going to be a part of this team, and I don't know whether I should go buy some, and these red ones are starting to get some holes in them. And, I just need to know if I need to go buy some black spikes. And he kind of chuckled, and he said, if I had to pencil a lineup, which I'm actually ironically doing right here, and he kind of threw the lineup across the desk, and I was the DH.
Nice.
So you're my starting DH. And I was like, so can I buy some black spikes? And he was like, go buy black spikes. And I was like,
or buy some black shoe polish, one of the two.
Yeah, and so I went and got me some, back then Converse had just come out with a 3/4 spike that was just great.
Really?
Great spike, man.
Really?
Yeah, and
did not know they made
wearing spikes is the coolest thing in the world. That's like one of those rite of passage things, because you play in so many leagues that don't allow spikes, and then you finally get to a league that does. And I played in some clubs and different things that had it, but you finally get to walk on that concrete. And
when Noah's saying spikes, you actually have like a steel right? A steel
cleat.
spike, a steel cleat that you use on the bottom of it, and there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
The way you can dig into the ground, it's amazing if you play baseball.
It was pretty funny. So so I made the team, and I was real happy and got to wear the pinstripe uniform.
What number were you?
Number 20.
Number 20, okay.
Yep. And that's what's on my letter jacket, number 20.
Mm-hmm.
Number 80 and number 20.
Okay.
And I still have my letter jacket.
Of course you do.
Hangs in my closet.
You should have worn it today.
It actually still fits.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, it does. I mean, maybe stretching the buttons a little bit, but
Yeah.
it still fits.
You don't have to button it. I don't think I ever buttoned mine.
No. We hardly had a reason to wear it, to be honest with you. It was so hot down here. But if it cracked below 72,
Yeah.
we had that jacket on.
You know where it is 72? Inside the school.
Is
That's
it
where
right?
that's where we wore ours all the time.
That's the it was a white T-shirt, blue jeans, boots, and my letter jacket.
Nice.
It was 71 degrees. That was in. But
Mm-hmm.
you had a reason to wear it in baseball. The first month of baseball is cold here, so that was fun. I started the season. I hit a couple of jacks and some scrimmages and stuff. I was just balling, man. The ball looked like a beach ball coming down the pitcher. And started the season 0 for 16 when we actually went into non-district play.
Sure.
I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, man. I don't know what happened.
So Noah, we still got time. Why don't you go switch out, go return those black cleats, and we'll call it.
Exactly. And man, so I went back and talked to coach. This was like 6 games into the season. I'm 0 and 16, and this goes back to the teammate thing, man. I felt like, oh man, I'm letting my team down. You know, maybe somebody else should be the DH, man, because I'm not getting it done. I can't even sack fly. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I went in there and said, Coach, I don't know what's going on, man. I'm doing everything I can. I'm taking 100 cuts a day. I don't know what's going on. But he goes, no, it's baseball. You're going to be just fine. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Swinging, yeah.
It's going to happen, man. You know, streaks or baseball, that's what it's all about. So
Hitting's such a mental thing.
which he was cool about, you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
like, all right. So
Gave you confidence.
we go in there, and I think it was the next game. It's like a Tuesday night, and I went like 3 for 4, and with a couple doubles. And I always got pinch run for, because in baseball you could re-enter the game once in high school, and so I always got pinch run for. So sophomores loved me because they got to go pinch run, you know, and so I had really good game that game, and then it was just on after that. You know, the ball started looking big again, and everything was going good. I think, you know, through the rest of that season, from the time I got out of that slump, I only struck out like 3 more times, because, you know, my job as a DH at that point was put the ball in play.
Yep.
Just whatever. Walk is useless for, you know, a 250-pound DH, you know.
I've got a funny story for you real quick.
Yeah.
I coach a kid in Medina Valley. His name's Walker Petty. He's starting quarterback out there, and he's a big baseball player too. And I was getting on him last year because he's a big kid. I mean, he's 6'4", he's like 215. He's a solid big kid. You look at him and say, this kid's got power. You know, he's gonna go yard all the time. And it was in this, what was it? It was in the spring. We were working. I said, well, how many dingers you got so far this year? Well, none, coach. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I was like, I had 10 my senior year. Let's go, son. And he says, no, that's not my game. I'm a singles guy. Get on base. So I said, that's not sexy. I don't like hearing stuff like that. So then I text him the week after. So how'd your game go? He had a tournament. He said, well, single, 2 walks. I said, okay, all right. Well, better luck next time, because we're talking about walks good as a single, got on base. I was like, if I got on base by a walk, I feel like I failed.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I guess we just don't see eye to eye on that. I was like, but, you know, I also got out a lot more. But anyway, sorry about that.
No, that's
Yeah.
and that was my point. I mean, I remember, you know, chit-chatting with umpires as, you know, you're going up there. I had a lot of dead time, so I got a lot of chances to study pitchers and do different things. I taught myself how to juggle 4 balls in the dugout, you know, because
That's impressive.
I didn't touch. The only time I ever touched a glove was in practice when I was shagging, and I never stepped foot in the field in the defensive position ever.
Life of a DH.
Pat Burke, our quarterback, healed, and so he played first base, and that was a good way to get us both in the lineup. And so we had a really good team too, and we were really solid, man. Had a great catcher, had a couple of really good pitchers. We had a shortstop that hit .507, Todd Stanley, and had some just great ballers out there. If I didn't mention your name, I apologize. But there's a lot of
They'll get over
20
it.
guys on that.
They'll
team.
get over it.
But anyways, all of a sudden, man, I started ripping the ball, hitting, going yard, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Against Holmes, I hit a game winner walk off, and I called it. I was like, this guy's throwing like knee high, like 85 miles an hour, dude. I'm like, he starts me with a fastball, I'm going. And I told the kid that was keeping score as a sophomore, I said, circle it, HR. I called my shot, right?
That's a big boy move.
So I bombed it, right? But, in reality, I probably told him to circle home run like 100 times that season already. I failed 99. But anyways, so,
You're going up with confidence, though. I like that.
Yeah, I was having fun.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, after starting 0-16, I was, hitting just below 400, having a great time. And I remember I hit a home run in our last district game. This guy was throwing BBs, man. Alex, I think his name was like Alex Hernandez or Alex something or another. He was throwing BBs, man. I'd faced him a couple times before, and I'd gotten maybe 2 hits off of him in the last 10 years of Little League and stuff. Played for Jay, and he was throwing BBs, man. And he checked one inside, and I check swinged it, and it hit the bat right in the sweet spot, went over the fence in the right field.
Oh, wow.
So I got credit in the newspaper that day for check swing home run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, that was all the pitcher, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Good
it's on
pitching,
film.
sure.
You can see me rounding the base, and he just puts his head down, and he's like, and so I remember coming around base on that when I came to home plate, and Todd was standing there. Todd and I have been playing since we were in the 4th grade together, baseball, 5th grade. And he looks at me and goes, dude, how funny would it be if you got cut 3 times and you make all district this year? And I said, I don't think it's going to happen, but, it's a good thought. And we finished as district champs. And
Dude, you guys had a lot of success.
We did.
In all the sports. That's awesome.
Yeah, we did. And our basketball team was really good that year, too. And sure enough, I got first team all district. In both, there were 2 papers back then. It was the San Antonio Light and the San Antonio Express.
Okay.
I got first team in both.
Do you have a conversation with Coach at all? Like, look what was
all
hanging
the time,
around the weight room.
all the time that was going on. I was getting interviewed after games and stuff like that. And, a lot of us were. You know what I mean? It was a team sport. You know what I mean? And we all said the same. It's a team sport.
Sure.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
And God willing, I can make the team better.
Because reporters love that answer.
Yeah, and my dad is, he has this book that he kept, and it's all the newspaper clippings that I'm in and stuff, and I go back and read it, and I just laugh because it was straight off of Bull Durham.
Yeah.
I was just quoting Bull Durham in Major League the whole way.
Oh yeah.
And so I got asked by a reporter, and he said, so why haven't we heard your name before? And I said, well, I was, and at the time I had made All-City in football and all that stuff too. And I said, well, I was a football player. And so, I had some other obligations that the coaches felt were more important than baseball. That was my answer.
That's a pretty darn good answer for a high school guy of saying my coach is an idiot for cutting me.
Pardon me, Willie, if you do hear this, but what I wanted to say was my coach is a jerk and can't explain to me why he cut to me 3 times. You know what I mean? But it's one of those life lessons.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
sure.
Are you going to come back a 4th time? You know what I mean? Are you going to pick yourself up and go do it again?
Sure.
And I've been fired from jobs, and I've been I've had successes, and I've had grand failures in business, and
Sure.
I own my own company, and I've gone up and down with that. And I can tell you that I pull from that experience for those things right there. It's like, man, I'm not playing baseball anymore, but I'm getting up to plate for my wife and kids now. You know what
Sure.
I mean, and stuff like that. And so I pulled from those experiences several times. And so it was funny. They asked me that several times, and they finally asked Willie Coach Franzen, about it. And he only had red cleats, and he just he took him to his senior year to buy black cleats. He said Noah would hit the ball 500 feet, and we could still throw him out at second base.
Oh no.
That's what he said,
Yeah.
and it was true. You know what I mean? And
but coach, I'm going sub-5 flat though.
Yeah, well, and so my speed had gotten better and all that good stuff, and I just matured as an athlete.
Sure.
And when you play little league and senior league ball, you can live off the bomb. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you can dare people to throw you out, and half of them can't. So
Yep.
you're successful. In high school, 3/4 of them can.
Yeah.
And in college, 90% of them will.
Yep.
And I played college baseball too, and that's another one of those things. It just gets a little bit tougher everywhere you go. And I started off, so the last 3 district games, I hit game winners, and then the first opening game of the thing, I put one off a scoreboard. And Todd was like, dude, you made all district. He's like, now you're going to make all city, dude. Here it comes, man. I was like, I don't think it's going to happen, dude. And sure enough.
Oh, my gosh.
And so it was like and I think that was a big part of it was that I kind of came out of nowhere. And I was loving it because, over here, baseball's a little bit more of a individualized kind of game. So
Definitely.
People can see what you're doing a little bit more.
Especially when you're a line guy, you know, and that and you don't have that type of spotlight on you that you would when you're a DH, and that's your job to do that type of stuff.
Well, and my dad has always been one of my biggest supporters, and it was real funny. And to this day, it still sits on his desk. But he got to game late, like he got there like the second inning, like the bottom of the second. We were the home team, and I hit either 5th or 6th most of the time. Love that spot. You get a lot of fat pitches in 5th and 6th, and my dad got there and he looks at me and he's just kind of hanging his head. I had opened up with a home run in the first, and so that was the only game, the only home run in my entire life. I don't even know how many home runs it is. It could be 100. I don't even know. Of all the games I played, and he missed that one, and he was real bent out of shape about it.
Wait, that was the only home run you did? No.
That was the only one he didn't see.
He didn't see. Okay,
Right.
I got you.
He got to the game late.
Yeah.
And so he was real sad about it, man. And so he yelled at me, and we were talking through the fence, in between innings, and he's like, "I'm sorry I wasn't here," and I thought he was going to cry.
Sure.
So I had the ball. Somebody, one of my brothers and his friends had gone off and gotten the ball.
Of course.
Brought it back, and so I took it and I threw it to him. I was like, "Don't sweat it, Pop. There's going to be more."
Trust me.
And he's got that game ball sitting on on his desk
awesome.
still to this day.
It means a
It's
lot
pretty
to
cool.
him.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I had the wonderful blessing of some pretty amazing parents, man.
Sure.
I had 3 parents. We joke around a little bit. I needed 3 parents. You know what I mean? It kind of corral me a little.
Sure.
And so I owe a great deal of I'm 100% of the man I am today is who they made me, and all those experiences that I got to have, and the opportunity to be in the limelight a little bit, but not so much that I could get big-headed. 'Cause
Sure.
I could get big-headed.
Oh yeah, everyone can.
And so it was it was a great opportunity. It was a great way to go off. And the sad part is we lost in the I think it was the 3rd round of the playoffs to Churchill 8-7, man. And we almost had a bench clear during that game.
I'm sure.
Now that's a team that we played since we were 5th grade. You know what I mean? Played baseball against them in all-stars and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of
little animosity. Yeah, a little animosity there.
There was a Churchill catcher made a tag out the plate and then kind of threw the ball in the guy's face. You know what I mean? And that sort of sparked it. You know, and they had a couple of really good pitchers and stuff. But it was a great experience, man.
Well, dude, that was awesome. I really enjoyed this. Noah, you had a fun career, man. You had a career that most kids don't have success like that. I know I didn't. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today.
It was a real pleasure, a real honor to be here, Yale. I've had the opportunity to watch the YVQB Academy start from the beginning.
Yeah.
See what it is today, and I can't wait to see what it is in the future, man.
I appreciate it.
You got a bright future, and thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, man. Love you, dude. We'll have Noah on again, and he'll talk about his time at the Air Force Academy and being in the Air Force. All right, guys. See y'all next week. Okay, Spinners, that's it. I want to thank my guest, Noah Oviedo, for joining me today. I gotta get him back in the studio soon to go into more detail on life as an Air Force football player and as an Air Force cadet. On the docket for the next couple weeks, I've got a former D1 defensive lineman, a former D1 All-American linebacker, an offensive coordinator from a high school in the San Antonio area, as well as some of the top high school QBs in San Antonio and in some cases in the entire state of Texas. If you want to know more about my quarterback academy or you're interested in training with us, you can find me at www.yvqbacademy.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Snapchat. If you're interested in being one of our sponsors, you can contact me through my website. See y'all next week.